Chapter 38-24. Early in the morning, Su Zihong's voice echoed throughout the entire Sharp Vigor Battalion. Come here. Come here. Get up, all of you. I'll hit you 10 times. If you don't come here, I'll hit you 10 times. The people who had just entered the battalion did not care about this. They were all prisoners on death row, so they were rebellious and fearless, hence they ignored him. 19-8-7-6-1. Su Zihong's voice rang out. Then, he rushed into every tent and threw them out of the tents one by one. Then, he began to hit them with the military baton. These people's acupuncture points were sealed. Their backs were hit 10 times and their flesh was torn. They lay on the ground in the martial arts field. Fan Yang folded his sleeves and watched the scene with a smile. Chu Li also stood by the side and looked at these people. He wanted to find a few good ones who could be trained so that they could be of use during critical moments. After Su Zihong hit them 10 times, their skin was torn and their acupuncture points were unsealed. However, they could not get up and were moaning on the ground. What are you screaming for? Su Zihong's face darkened. He waved the baton and shouted, You're moaning like a girl. Are you men? How can you behave like this after a few hits? You'll know that it's a piece of cake when you're slashed or stabbed by a spear on the battlefield in the future. Shut up. Whoever screams again will be hit 10 more times. The moaning stopped immediately. Everyone shut their mouth. There was only a dull thud in the field. It was the sound of a baton hitting someone's back. After Su Zihong hit them one by one, he scoffed with a sullen face. This is the lightest punishment. Tomorrow I'll count to 5. If you don't come here within the count of 5, you'll be hit 20 times. I'd rather you die here than on the battlefield. Everyone was shocked. Chu Li turned around and returned to his tent. Fan Yang smiled and comforted the people. He said that everything was for their own good. Without strict military discipline and adequate training, they would definitely die on the battlefield. It was better to suffer some pain, get some injuries, and bleed a little here than to die on the battlefield. After a round of carrot and stick, the 20 prisoners could only bear with it even if they were resentful. They did not want to be hit again. The next day, Chu Li ordered Fan Yang to erect 20 wooden poles on the martial arts field. Each pole was as tall as a person and as thick as a thigh. Chu Li then ordered everyone to stand on the poles and walk on them. Everyone had to walk at the same time. As soon as the last person left, the next person would take his place. If one of them walked too slowly or too quickly, they would make a series of mistakes and fall together. Fan Yang and Su Zihong stood at the side with whips in their hands. Whoever made a mistake would be whipped and their skin would be torn open. Chu Li sat in the tent and cultivated. After his meridians and dantian had been expanded and strengthened, his cultivation had skyrocketed. He needed time to slowly adapt to it. Moreover, he was also observing Yang Ping's thoughts. He knew what he was thinking and was constantly paying attention to the situation of the battlefield. Yang Ping's move was aimed at Chu Li's weak spot. Without any merit, he would not be able to leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion, he would not be able to leave Soaring Eagle Cavalry, and he would not be able to return to the Holy Church of Light. Once this battle was over, he wouldn't have a chance to make a contribution. Moreover, the next opportunity to make a contribution would most likely be against the Ji dynasty. He did not have a strong sense of belonging to the Ji dynasty. After all, he grew up in the Temple of Autumn. He did not like King and or the Emperor. Everything he did was for the High Duke's public house. Once the Ji dynasty was destroyed, the High Duke's public house would not survive. Moreover, if they succeeded in winning the throne, the Ji dynasty would not be an outsider. He did not believe that Yang Ping would be able to suppress him forever. The Qiu dynasty's cavalry was not to be trifled with. The Li dynasty had the upper hand now because Qing Lin and Qing Xin had set up a big formation to block the Qiu dynasty's cavalry. However, the Qiu dynasty was full of talents and they must have formation masters. Once this formation was broken, the battle would reach its climax. Once all of Soaring Eagle cavalry was mobilized, the Sharp Vigor battalion would not be idle. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. He wanted to train these 20 people first. Once they entered the battlefield, they would be able to perform well. If he wanted to make a big contribution, he would need their help. With that in mind, he created a formation and asked Su Zihong and Fan Yang to train them while he sat in the tent to comprehend the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. The last time he comprehended the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture in Yin Cave, his boundary had improved greatly. However, it was too rushed in Yin Cave, so he needed to calm down and sort it out slowly. He needed to convert these insights into something that would be branded in his mind. The atmosphere in Soaring Eagle Cavalry's military camp suddenly became tense. Chuli was already sitting in Yang Ping's tent and saw that the formation outside Falling Autumn City had been broken. The Qiu dynasty's cavalry was at the foot of the city, planning to attack the city. The Qiu dynasty's cavalry was not only powerful in the wild but also in attacking cities. The people in Falling Autumn City were not optimistic. They felt that Falling Autumn City would fall sooner or later if they could not stop the Qiu dynasty's cavalry. Zhang Fengping lay on his bed and panted heavily. He was in so much pain that his face was pale. He was tall and handsome. He was 23 years old and was a perfected innate master. He was also a rare master in the martial arts world. Because his sister was killed by the Ma family's third young master, he was captured and sentenced to death. He and his sister depended on each other since they were young. Now that she was dead, he had nothing to live for. Not only did he kill the Ma family's third young master, but he was also prepared to kill the entire Ma family. However, the Ma family was protected by a master. In the end, he was defeated and sent to prison. He was almost executed. 3 days before his execution, he was sent to the Sharp Vigor battalion, which saved his life. He did not feel happy at all. He only thought about killing a few Qiu dynasty's cavalry to satisfy his craving in the battlefield and die a quick death. A young man was lying on the other bed. His name was Huang Hu. He was tall and thin with many pimples on his face. His eyes were bright and full of energy. Zhang Fengping was whipped 3 times while Huang Hu was whipped 5 times. He was in so much pain that he grimaced. "What kind of training is this?" Huang Hu sighed. "If this goes on, I'll be beaten to a pulp." The old injury on his back had not healed yet, but a new one had appeared. It was badly mutilated. He had developed a sleeping posture that he could not change. Zhang Fengping lay quietly without saying a word. Huang Hu said, "Elder Zhang, how long do you think we can live?" "Not more than a year," Zhang Fengping said faintly. Huang Hu sighed. "Yes, we'll die if we go there. If we can make a contribution before we die, it'll be considered as earning something for our family." His martial arts had just reached the innate stage. He became a prisoner on death row because he robbed the rich to help the poor. He robbed a rich family to help himself. He learned martial arts and went down the mountain. When he returned home and saw that his family was as poor as a church mouse, he could not help but kill them. In the end, he underestimated the guards of the family. He was captured after killing 2 of them and thrown into prison. He was waiting to be chopped in half at the waist, but he was sent here. Sigh, it's worse than death. It's better to be executed directly. Huang Hu shook his head and sighed. It's too much suffering. It's just a dozen whips and 10 sticks. Zhang Fengping said faintly. Huang Hu said, "Elder Zhang, I'm afraid of pain the most. I'd rather slit my throat with a knife than suffer like this. I've been walking that stake all day and even in my dreams at night. I'm so tired." Zhang Fengping said, "A small arm can't beat a big leg. I heard that it's Master Zhao's idea." Huang Hu moved his head closer and lowered his voice. "I heard that Master Zhao has a very powerful background. A disciple of the Holy Church of Light," Zhang Fengping said faintly. Huang Hu inhaled sharply. The Holy Church of Light. We're using a formation, a military formation, Zhang Fengping said. It can indeed save our lives. Chapter 38-25. Zhang Fengping glanced at Huang Hu and said, You don't know about formations? I don't. Huang Hu shook his head. He had never heard of formations at his level. Zhang Fengping said, It looks ordinary, but you'll know how powerful it is when you use it. Can it really save our lives? Huang Hu asked. More or less. It all depends on the quality of the formation. Zhang Fengping said, Master Zhao is young and has just entered the Holy Church of Light. I don't think it's a powerful formation. He only knows a little bit about it. It's better than nothing. So we're working for nothing? Huang Hu said indignantly, Are they going to torture us like this? We're free anyway, Zhang Fengping said. He didn't care about anything. He had nothing to live for, everything was dull and tasteless. Even though the training was so difficult that he was whipped twice and the pain was unbearable, it didn't cause any ripples in his heart. Huang Hu scoffed. They don't treat us as humans. We're going to die soon, Zhang Fengping said. Elder Zhang, are you willing to die? Huang Hu lowered his voice. Can't we give it a try? I've never heard of anyone from the Sharp Vigor Battalion surviving. Zhang Fengping said. If we don't die today, we'll die tomorrow. We'll die one day. Sigh, Elder Zhang, you're such a boring person. Huang Hu shook his head helplessly. Zhang Fengping looked at him and said nothing. Suddenly, footsteps were heard. A burly young man with a pancake face entered and lowered his voice. Elder Zhang, Elder Huang. Both of them turned around. Huang Hu smiled. Su Daxing, you're living well. Su Daxing chuckled. How are you? How's your injury? I won't die, Huang Hu said angrily. I'm not as smart as you. I didn't even get whipped once. Sigh, Sergeant Su is too cruel. Su Daxing said. He beat us to death. He doesn't treat us as humans at all. He likes to torture us, and the more he beats, the more excited he gets. Yes, yes. Huang Hu quickly nodded. Zhang Fengping looked at Su Daxing and said nothing. Su Daxing said, I just can't stand it. Everyone is complaining. That's right. Huang Hu said. If this goes on, we will be beaten to a pulp. Before we can even fight the enemy, we will be killed by our own people first. That's why we can't just sit here and wait for death. Su Daxing said, We have to let squad leader Su know that we're not sheep that can be beaten and scolded. We're humans too. Exactly. Huang Hu nodded vigorously. Zhang Fengping said calmly, Old Su, what are you trying to do? Let's boycott Sergeant Su's training together. Su Daxing said, As long as we're united, he can't do anything to us. I'm just afraid that some people don't have strong willpower and will be scared by him halfway and give up. This. Huang Hu was startled and immediately felt a little guilty. Isn't this a little too big? Not at all. Su Daxing said, It's not like we're howling mutiny, and we're not going to besiege him. We're just not going to listen to him. Tomorrow morning, everyone, don't go out. Huang Hu looked at Zhang Fengping. Is this really okay? No problem at all. Su Daxing smiled and said, If there's a problem, it's my problem. Everyone listens to me. If there's a problem, I'll take responsibility. That's fine too. Huang Hu smiled and said, Let's show him what we're made of and let him know that we're not to be trifled with. We have our own tempers too, so he can't act recklessly. That's right, that's right. Su Daxing chuckled and said, Then it's a deal. Don't wake up tomorrow morning. No matter how he threatens you, don't wake up. No problem. Huang Hu said. Su Daxing fist saluted. I still have to speak to the others. I'll take my leave first. Go, go, Huang Hu said excitedly. After Su Daxing left, Huang Hu smiled and said, There's going to be a good show. Old Zhang, will Sergeant Su give in this time? No, Zhang Fengping said. Huang Hu said, "Even if he doesn't give in, it's fine as long as he's cautious." Zhang Fengping said calmly, "Let's wait and see." The next morning, no one heard Su Zihong's shouts. Su Zihong and Fan Yang were in Chu Li's tent. They were eating and chatting. "If you ask me, I'll give each of them 20 strokes of the military stick. Let's see if they're obedient or not. They're audacious enough to conspire in secret." Su Zihong took a bite of his bun and chewed it hard. "It'll be strange if they don't obey us." Chu Li said, "Old Su, we can't use force. Otherwise, we'll make them rebel. We can do that under normal circumstances, but time waits for no one. We don't have much time left." "That's right." Fan Yang drank his porridge and chuckled. "It's better to use both the carrot and the stick. In short, we have to make them train obediently. Everything else can be put aside." "What should we do with Su Daxing?" Su Zihong asked. Chu Li said, "Old Su, what do you think? Beat him half to death as a warning to others." Su Zihong scoffed. "He's audacious enough to overestimate himself." Fan Yang smiled and said, "I don't think so. If he's restless, we'll just teach him a lesson." Chu Li said, "Just pretend that you don't know anything. The problem is that they don't have confidence in the formation. Looks like we have to let them know the power of this formation." He glanced at the two men. Su Zihong and Fan Yang were skeptical as well. They had never seen the power of a formation before. They were only convinced by Chu Li's identity as a disciple of the Holy Church of Light and his superior martial arts skills. Therefore, they were willing to train everyone wholeheartedly. "What should we do?" "Train for another 3 days," Chu Li muttered. "Then, find some people to test its power." Early in the morning, Su Daxing and the others pricked up their ears excitedly. They lay on their beds and waited for Su Zihong's voice to be heard. Then, they would stay silent and teach him a lesson to vent their anger. However, they lay on their beds until noon. They were so tired that they felt uncomfortable, but they did not hear Su Zihong's voice. Their stomachs kept growling because they had not eaten breakfast. They tried their best to suppress their hunger, but there was still no movement after noon. Su Zihong did not speak, and no food came. They could not wait any longer. They got up and went to the martial arts field. They saw Su Zihong walking on the poles. His movements were incredibly fast and smooth. He was a grandmaster and had secretly trained at night. Therefore, his body movement was graceful and natural. It was not something an ordinary person could compare to. "Sergeant Su, aren't we going to eat?" someone asked. Su Zihong answered as he walked, "If we don't train, we won't be able to eat." "Why aren't we training?" "Sergeant Su, you didn't tell us." "Do you think I don't know what you're up to?" Su Zihong sneered. "All right, since none of you want to train, we'll just sit around. But we can't starve. If you don't want to train, then don't eat." Su Zihong glanced at them coldly. "If you want to eat, you'll have to train." Su Daxing shouted, "We'd rather starve to death than be trampled on by others." "Very well." Su Zihong scoffed. He did not stop walking and ignored the others. At night, the people gritted their teeth and persevered. They were so hungry that they could not sleep well. The next morning, "Get up! Get up! Come here! Come here!" Just as dawn broke, Su Zihong's voice was heard. "Those who can't count to 5 will be beaten 20 times. Apart from Su Daxing, everyone else ran to Su Zihong within the count of 5. Chapter 38-26. P.S. Update completed. I'm busy today, so I don't have to worry about writing. I'll try to write more tomorrow to make up for it." Because he hesitated and exceeded the time limit, he received 20 strokes of the stick. However, Su Zihong did not hit him so hard. He only suffered minor injuries that did not affect his training. Su Daxing initially thought that he would be severely injured after offending Su Zihong. He did not expect to be let off so easily, which made him feel ashamed and grateful. With Su Zihong's temper, he would have beaten him to death. However, Chu Li had reminded him that it was best not to miss any of the 20 men. Even if they were missing, they had to master the formation first. Su Daxing could only suppress his anger and wave his stick. In the early morning, Jiang Jinfu quietly went to the Sharp Vigor Battalion and quickly walked around before hurrying back to the central tent. He fist saluted when he entered. "General, they're still practicing that formation. It's ridiculous." They had also been trained in military formations, but they did not practice it this way. Chu Li's method was ridiculous no matter how he looked at it. It was like playing house. There was no power in it at all. It was more like a game. Perhaps this was their last pastime. After all, the Sharp Vigor Battalion would die once they were deployed. They were too weak and could not withstand a single blow. Yang Ping was holding a book. He stood upright and stared at it. "They're still practicing that formation?" "Yes," Jiang Jinfu said. "General, should we tell him to stop fooling around?" "Let him be if he wants to fool around." Yang Ping looked at him from the book. "It's better to keep those guys busy than idle. He's doing a good deed. With this training method, they eat a lot. It's a waste of food." Jiang Jinfu said. "It's not that bad. There are only 20 of them." Yang Ping waved his hand. "Go and ask if they want someone to spar with them. Let's see what they're practicing." "Yes." Jiang Jinfu quickly answered and strode out of the tent. He quickly arrived at the Sharp Vigor Battalion. Fan Yang greeted him with a smile. "Young Jiang, what can I do for you?" "Old Fan, what are you practicing?" "Military formation." "Hee, is this a military formation?" Jiang Jinfu shook his head and laughed. "All right, the general asked me to come over and help you. Do you need any help?" "I was just about to ask the general for help," Fan Yang said with a smile. "We're thinking of getting a 100-man squad to attack them." "A 100-man team?" Jiang Jinfu laughed in surprise. "Stop joking around. I wouldn't joke about something like that." Fan Yang chuckled and said, "According to Master Zhao, these 20 people should have no problem dealing with 100 people." Jiang Jinfu laughed. "Haha, good. I'll bring some people over in the afternoon and let them know what the Li Dynasty's cavalry is like." "Sure." Fan Yang smiled and said, "Then we'll wait." Jiang Jinfu turned his head and glanced at the 20 men scurrying on the stake. He then turned around and left, intending to call a 100-man team over. After lunch, Su Zihong raised his voice and shouted, "We'll be having a competition in the afternoon. 100 cavaliers will be coming over. If you can defeat this 100-man team, you'll get to rest for 2 days. If you can't defeat them, you'll have to train even more at night." Everyone listened helplessly, wishing they could faint. Training was so hard, and he even had to train at night. If he had to train at night, he might as well die. Training like this would drive him crazy. "Now, let's practice the stakes." Su Zihong raised his voice and shouted, "Everyone, take a saber and point it diagonally upward. You don't have to use any moves, just don't get knocked away." Everyone cheered. They felt indescribably relaxed without having to walk on the stake. It was as if the ropes that bound their bodies had been loosened. They each picked up an ironwood saber from the weapon rack beside them and raised it diagonally upward. Then, they began to run, stepping on white circles that had been drawn on the ground. Su Zihong and Fan Yang could not help but nod. The 20 of them looked like a saw wheel spinning at high speed. They did not need to brandish their sabers, but it was already frightening enough as if they could cut through anything. After lunch and a short break, they continued to practice on the stake. The ground suddenly trembled. Then, there was a muffled rumble. 100 cavaliers arrived like a howling gale. They charged straight into the Sharp Vigor Battalion and charged toward the 20 men. More than 100 cavaliers were holding machetes in their hands. Although they were ironwood sabers and would not be fatal, they would be in excruciating pain and might even break their bones. Judging by their aggressive manner, it was obvious that they wanted to injure the Sharp Vigor Battalion. "Get down! Get into formation!" Su Zihong shouted. Everyone hurriedly leaped down and landed in front of him. Then, they took up their respective positions. Turn the formation, Su Zihong shouted. Every now and then, everyone would be whipped by him. Hence, they had subconsciously obeyed his orders. However, fear could not stop them from obeying him. They began to run, and the formation immediately began to operate. Like a chainsaw, it sliced through the cavaliers. The cavaliers were agile. When they realized that the situation was not good, they quickly withdrew their sabers and hid under the horses' bellies. Bang, bang, bang! The horses neighed in pain after being struck by the ironwood sabers. The horses' necks were struck several times, and they could not help but neigh as they fell sideways. The horses fell in front of the formation one after another, but they could not stop the formation from operating. The Sharp Vigor Battalion retreated nimbly to avoid the fallen horses and waited for the cavaliers behind them to charge toward them. The cavaliers behind them took advantage of the situation and circled behind them. However, they were still struck by the sabers, and their horses fell one after another. When the 20 men realized that the 100 imposing cavaliers could not do anything to them, their confidence was boosted. They ran even faster and gripped their sabers even tighter. The horses fell one after another, and they struggled to get up. Meanwhile, the cavaliers on the horses retreated from the battle. If they had used real sabers, their horses would have been dead. The remaining 50 cavaliers circled around them, looking for their weaknesses. After a while, they took out the bows on their backs and shot headless arrows. The arrows rained down on the men's heads. Puff, 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 puff. As soon as the arrows reached their heads, they were deflected by the sabers. The sabers formed a net, and not a single arrow landed on the men's heads. The cavaliers did not believe this and continued to shoot arrows. The 20 men did not panic at all. They did not seem to care at all. The densely packed arrows could not penetrate the net made by the sabers. When the cavaliers finished shooting all the arrows in their quiver, they still could not do anything to the 20 men. Hence, they retreated and decisively withdrew from the Sharp Vigor Battalion. This was the tradition of Soaring Eagle cavalry. If they failed to hit their target, they would retreat and not get entangled. Chu Li stood in front of his tent and smiled as he looked at the scene. When he saw this, he nodded in satisfaction. These prisoners had great potential. They were able to unleash 30% of the formation's power. It was truly rare. "Let's go," one of the cavaliers shouted. "Don't embarrass yourself." 100 cavaliers could not do anything to 20 infantrymen. It was a great humiliation. They whizzed away and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Jiang Jinfu was the only one left looking at them in confusion. He could not believe this outcome. After all, there were 100 cavaliers. The power of a cavalier was far greater than that of an infantryman. 100 cavaliers could easily defeat 500 or even 1,000 infantrymen. Yet, they could not do anything to these 20 men. More importantly, these new soldiers had only been training for 10 days. Su Zihong shouted, "Stop the formation!" Everyone stopped in unison and stayed still. After this battle, their spirits had suddenly changed. Their eyes were bright and their expressions were firm. They now had an iron-blooded aura. Chu Li smiled. Only soldiers like this could be used and contribute to the battle. Su Zihong and Fan Yang went to Jiang Jinfu and interrupted him from his daze. "Young Jiang, what do you think?" Fan Yang chuckled. "Are you satisfied with this formation?" "I'll report this to the general." Jiang Jinfu could not bear to see them, so he immediately left. Chapter 38-27. Yang Ping sat behind a large table and stroked his mustache as he listened to Jiang Jinfu's report. He nodded thoughtfully. "Does this mean that this formation is quite powerful?" "Yes," Jiang Jinfu replied. "I didn't expect this formation to be so powerful. General, if these death row prisoners can be trained to this extent in just 10 days, we'll be even more powerful if we train our elites." It's useless, Yang Ping said lazily. Soaring Eagle cavalry is a cavalry, not infantry. Alright, you don't have to worry about this anymore. You're dismissed. Yes. Jiang Jinfu retreated helplessly. Yang Ping stroked his mustache thoughtfully. After a long while, he shook his head. He still could not send the Sharp Vigor Battalion. This damned Zhao Dai was such a troublemaker. Although the saint had just sent someone over to instruct them to treat Zhao Dai as an ordinary person, he would be stupid if he listened to her. The members of the Sharp Vigor Battalion had completely changed. They were energetic and worked even harder without Su Zihong's whip. After witnessing the power of the formation, they treated it as a life-saving skill. As long as they mastered it, they would be able to save their lives on the battlefield. If they did not master it and made a mistake on the battlefield, not only would they implicate their comrades, but they would also hurt themselves. They had to master it even if it cost them their lives. Chu Li had been cultivating in his tent. Apart from the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture, he also had the Nature Restoration Manifestation. The battlefield was the best place to cultivate the Nature Restoration Manifestation. 3 days later, the atmosphere in Soaring Eagle Cavalry's camp suddenly became tense. The setting sun was as red as blood. The entire Soaring Eagle Cavalry's camp was shrouded in a blood-red light. Chu Li followed Jiang Jinfu to the main tent. He did not say a word along the way as the two of them looked at each other with disgust. When he entered the tent, there were already 10 high-ranking military officers standing inside. Their faces were taut and full of killing intent. Chu Li had already recognized them from the omniscient mirror. They were all centurions. Tomorrow we'll attack Flying Cloud Cavalry. Yang Ping pressed the table and looked at the crowd calmly. Everyone began to discuss in low voices. General, are we going to attack first? A centurion fist saluted. Aren't we supposed to defend the city? The Grand General has ordered us to take advantage of their carelessness and attack them head-on to relieve the pressure of defending the city. Yang Ping said. General, shouldn't we be dealing with the heavy cavalry? Why did they go up against the Flying Cloud Cavalry? Another centurion asked. Yang Ping said, the Black Bear Army will deal with the heavy cavalry. What is the great general trying to do? One of the centurions frowned and said, although our cavalry is powerful, it can't compare to the Flying Cloud Cavalry. He said, shaking his head. Everyone shook their heads. They were not ordinary soldiers, so they would not be fooled by the propaganda. They knew very well that their cavalry could not be compared to the Qiu dynasty's cavalry. After all, they had learned from the Qiu dynasty's cavalry, so they were not confident that they could defeat their ancestors. Yang Ping said calmly, look at you guys cowering before the battle. General, the cavalrymen of the Flying Cloud Cavalry have been riding horses since they were young. It's said that all of them are highly skilled archers. A centurion shook his head and said, it's fine to deal with their heavy cavalrymen and infantry, but to deal with the Flying Cloud Cavalry, Yang Ping said, then what do you think we should do? Surrender? Of course we can't surrender. We can ask the great general to step aside. Oh, do you think the great general is stupid? You don't know this? Then what's going on? Just follow the orders. As for what the great general thinks, you don't have to know. Even I don't know. Yang Ping glared at them coldly, making them feel diffident. The more calm he was, the scarier he was. Who knew when he would suddenly turn hostile and start scolding them? The calmer he was, the more nervous the people became. It was difficult to guard against him, and they were always nervous when they stood in front of him. Yang Ping's calm gaze fell on Chu Li. Zhao Dai, your Sharp Vigor Battalion will clean up the battlefield this time. Chu Li gave a fist salute. Yes, General. Yang Ping was waiting for him to scold him. As long as he questioned him, Yang Ping would take the opportunity to vent his anger. General, they're the Sharp Vigor Battalion, not the supply camp. A centurion could not help but say. Ever since Zhao Dai joined the Sharp Vigor Battalion, The general had completely protected the Sharp Vigor Battalion, which made people feel indignant. The Sharp Vigor Battalion was responsible for gathering information. Although they were defending the city now, they still needed information. However, the Sharp Vigor Battalion had completely rested. They were very indignant. He was just a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. Why was the general so afraid of him? The general had always said that the disciples of the Holy Church of Light should not meddle in military affairs. His actions were obviously inconsistent with what he said. They were dissatisfied with Yang Ping and used Chu Li as an excuse. Yang Ping said coldly, "Is it easy to clean up the battlefield? If we carry the corpses, we'll have to fight them if we encounter them. It's not as easy as charging. All of you, shut up." The 10 centurions looked at Chu Li. They suspected that Chu Li had given the general some great benefits to protect him. Jiang Jinfu stood at the side and looked at him coldly. Unfortunately, Chu Li did not lose his composure. He could not watch the centurion's cold eyes and remained calm. He secretly cursed, "What a thick-skinned fellow! Get ready. Tomorrow, beat the drum as the signal and rush out of the east gate. We'll attack while they're eating." Yang Ping said in a low voice. "Yes." Everyone gave a fist salute and responded. They turned around and strode out of the tent. In the early morning, the drums were beating. It was a rare day with good weather. The sun rose early and shone brightly. Everyone from the Sharp Vigor Battalion rode on their horses. They were all wearing radiant armor with helmets that only revealed their faces. They carried 2 long blades on their backs and round shields on the left and longbows on the right. Their equipment was neat and excellent, gleaming under the bright sun. Apart from their equipment, they also carried a bundle on their horses. The drums were beating non-stop, but they sat still on their horses. The war horses were also wearing radiant armor that revealed their eyes, noses, mouths, and limbs. They were light cavalrymen who pursued speed. Therefore, the radiant armor was very light and could only block arrows from afar. The war horses were tapping their front hooves anxiously. They were extremely anxious, completely different from their masters. Everyone's bodies were tense. They were finally going to the battlefield, and might not be able to return. Death was at hand. Some of them wanted to retreat, some were calm, and some were excited. Chu Li was at the front, facing the direction of the camp gate. Suddenly, he turned his head and glanced at the crowd. He said calmly, "With everyone accompanying us, we won't die alone. Even if we go to the underworld, we can still defeat the imps with the formation. What's there to be afraid of?" "That's right, there's nothing to be afraid of," the crowd responded. When they thought about how they would die with others by their side, they were no longer as afraid. This was human nature. Bang bang! Bang bang bang! Bang 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 bang! When he heard the rhythmic drumming, Fan Yang quickly said, "Master Zhao, it's our turn. Go!" Chu Li yelled. He urged his mount to charge out. Su Zihong and Fan Yang followed closely behind him, followed by 20 other riders. The riders charged out of the Sharp Vigor Battalion and onto the spacious road in the center. The cavalrymen in front of them had already rushed out of the main gate of Soaring Eagle Cavalry's camp. They galloped out of the camp gate and entered the main street in the city. Soon, they rushed out of the open east gate. Then, their war horses galloped eastward along the main road. Chu Li turned his head to look at the people on horseback. Some of them had lowered their helmets while others had removed their helmets to reveal excited, pale, or flushed faces. He could clearly sense their uneasiness. He suddenly uttered a few words. It was the mantra of Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture. Chapter 38:28. He did not use his inner energy, but his words rang clearly in their ears. It was as if a gust of wind had swept across the lake and swept away all the debris. They instantly calmed down and became calm. They were no longer anxious and fearful. This was the magical effect of Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture. Su Zihong and Fan Yang looked at Chu Li in surprise. They did not expect him to have such an ability. This ability was very useful. Once a battle broke out, the calmest person would have the highest chance of survival. Restless thoughts would often affect one's judgment and actions. On the battlefield, life and death were often decided in a split second. A single judgment could mean the difference between life and death. Chu Li's voice was calm and steady. If we don't want to stay in Sharp Vigor Battalion until we die, we can't let go of this opportunity to be free. Everyone became spirited. Chu Li said calmly, "The formation we've trained can be very useful on the battlefield. It depends on whether you can seize the opportunity." Su Zihong quickly asked, "Master Zhao, do we have a chance? Flying Cloud Cavalry is more powerful than Soaring Eagle Cavalry. To defeat them, we'll have to kill their general," Chu Li said. "Turn left." He suddenly tugged on the reins, and everyone left the main road. They walked along a small path and slowed down a lot. Yang Ping was currently in the middle of the army. He was wearing an ordinary radiant armor and was riding his horse. Jiang Jinfu urged his horse to approach him and whispered, "General, the Sharp Vigor Battalion deserted. I don't know where they went." "Ignore them," Yang Ping said as he stared into the distance. Jiang Jinfu nodded. Yang Ping frowned. Soaring Eagle Cavalry had been mobilized, so he could not let the Sharp Vigor Battalion stay in the camp. Otherwise they would be criticized. Bringing them out to clean up the battlefield was already an explanation to everyone. As long as they did not rush into the battlefield and stayed obediently, it would be fine. They were probably afraid and did not dare to come over. Forget it, he could just ignore them and settle the score with them after the battle. He had many thoughts and his attitude toward Chu Li was very contradictory. On one hand, he hated Chu Li and did not want him to become a centurion. He could not wait for him to stay in the Sharp Vigor Battalion forever. On the other hand, he was worried about Chu Li's identity as a disciple of the Holy Church of Light, so he did not want Chu Li to stay in the Sharp Vigor Battalion to prevent himself from being implicated. Due to these conflicting thoughts, he decided to ignore the Sharp Vigor Battalion and cast them aside. He could not be bothered to deal with them. The hooves of the horses were wrapped in thick cloth, so they didn't make a loud sound when they stepped on the ground. However, this could only be used for short sprints. Once the distance was too long, the cloth would be torn, and the hooves would no longer be able to hide. The Qiu dynasty's cavalry was preparing to attack the city, and the battalions were already very close to Falling Autumn City. The Flying Cloud Cavalry was less than 5 miles away from the east gate of Falling Autumn City. On a flat and wide plain, 5 miles would only take a sprint. The Soaring Eagle Cavalry rushed out of the forest and headed straight for the tents that were built against the mountain on the grassland in the distance. It was the Flying Cloud Cavalry's tent. Jiang Jinfu and the other guards surrounded Yang Ping. Jiang Jinfu solemnly opened a box and hung a heavy black flag on it. The black eagle flag fluttered in the wind, fluttering in the wind. The centurions also unfurled their own flags. Apart from a small eagle, there was a word embroidered on the side of each flag, which read Zhao Zhang Wang. The 10 flags scattered and each charged in a different direction. These military flags were filled with killing intent. They were formed by absorbing the killing intent from the battlefield for a long time. Inner energy could not be used within a 2-mile radius of the military flags. Even a grandmaster would become a commoner without inner energy and could only rely on his body. These military flags could only be waved on the battlefield when they were stimulated by the killing intent. Yang Ping and the other 10 men left the main group and headed toward a hill at the side. Small hills like this could be seen occasionally on the flat grassland. The military camp of the Flying Cloud Cavalry was built against the mountain in the distance. There was water at the foot of the mountain, and the forest was lush. The camp was a few times higher than the small hills here, so they could see their attack from afar. Moo! The sound of a bull's horn echoed in the Flying Cloud Cavalry's camp. The Flying Cloud cavalry reacted very quickly. Before the Soaring Eagle cavalry could get close, they had already rushed out of the camp's gate. They split into 10 teams and charged diagonally at the 10 teams of Soaring Eagle cavalry, making the Soaring Eagle cavalry very uncomfortable. Once the warhorses started to charge, they would move faster and faster like a rolling snowball. If they were to forcefully change their direction midway, the momentum of their charge would disappear. On the battlefield, the most important thing was the momentum. Once the momentum was up, the combat strength of the cavalrymen would increase greatly. Once the momentum was gone, the combat strength of the soldiers would be weakened. The experienced response from the Flying Cloud cavalry immediately negated the advantage of the surprise attack from the Soaring Eagle cavalry. The 20 teams were instantly caught in a fierce battle. The warhorses kept galloping and circled each other to test each other's strength. Volleys of arrows rained down on them. Occasionally, an unlucky cavalryman would fall off his horse, or a horse would fall after being shot in the eye. The cavalrymen of each team would shoot at each other from a distance to keep the warhorses galloping so that the arrows would not land on them. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they would not engage in close-quarters combat. Close-quarters combat would result in both sides suffering heavy losses. Every single cavalryman was precious. Only at the very last moment would they choose to engage in close-quarters combat if they wanted both sides to suffer heavy losses. The side that had the upper hand would try their best to avoid such a situation. Shooting from afar was the essence of a light cavalry. As the Flying Cloud cavalry and the Soaring Eagle cavalry continued to fight, some warhorses or cavalrymen would fall off their horses from time to time. However, even though so many arrows had been shot, very few of them fell off their horses. Most of them were only injured. As they galloped, their horsemanship was excellent and they were very good at dodging arrows. Yang Ping's expression was gloomy as he stood on a small hill and gazed into the distance. The sneak attack did not give them the upper hand. Instead, the Flying Cloud cavalry had gained the upper hand. The cavalrymen of the Flying Cloud cavalry were even more skilled. All of them dodged the arrows with ease and shot at them with their bows. In just a short while, the Soaring Eagle cavalry had lost 20 cavalrymen, while the Flying Cloud cavalry had only lost 5 cavalrymen. If this went on, the Soaring Eagle cavalry would only lose 5 cavalrymen. He glanced at the mountainside 1 kilometer away and saw a large flag fluttering there. It was the flag of the Flying Cloud cavalry. Jiang Jinfu held onto the large flag as he stared at the battlefield in the distance. He wished he could go forward and fight with his own hands. As the horses galloped forward, the neighing of the war horses rang out incessantly. The cavalrymen on the horses were cursing loudly to boost their courage. Some of them had fallen to the ground and were wailing in pain. All sorts of noises were mixed together and it was a chilling sight to behold. Chu Li said, "Faster! Faster!" He urged his warhorse forward and entered the forest at the foot of the mountain. "Change your armor," Chu Li ordered. Everyone dismounted from their horses and took off their original armors. Then, they opened their backpacks and changed into the armor of the Flying Cloud cavalry. These were the armors of the Flying Cloud cavalry who had been killed in the previous years. Chu Li did not know if this would lower their guard and buy them some distance. The radiant armor was too conspicuous. From afar, anyone would be able to tell that it was the Soaring Eagle cavalry. It would not be convenient for them to launch a surprise attack. "Wrap the hooves of the horses," Chu Li said. Everyone took out thick cotton cloths from their backpacks and wrapped the hooves of the horses. Then, they leaped onto their horses and threw their original armors into the forest. Chu Li glanced at the crowd and said in a low voice, "After we cross this mountain, we'll reach the Flying Cloud cavalry's general flag at the next mountain. If we can kill the general of the Flying Cloud cavalry, it'll be a great merit." Chapter 38-29. Yes. Everyone was energized and rubbed their palms together. Chu waved his hand and rode out of the forest. They took a small path at the foot of the mountain and circled around it. Soon, a vast grassland appeared in front of them. They galloped on their horses and soon arrived at the foot of another mountain. Chu waved his hand and gestured for them to dismount. Then, he tied their horses to a tree and carried their equipment with him. Then, they followed Chu up the mountain. Although they could not use their inner energy, they were still martial arts practitioners and their bodies were much stronger than ordinary people. Moreover, they had been practicing pole standing these days, so their legs were more agile and they could walk on the mountain path effortlessly. After a while, they arrived at the mountainside. Chu said in a low voice, "They're on the opposite side of the mountain. When I tell you to charge, charge according to the formation. Shoot the arrows in the first round, then put away the arrows. Don't use the shields. Just tie them to your back and use your blades." Everyone nodded. Chu quickened his pace. General Zhu Wuji of Flying Cloud Cavalry sat on his horse. 100 men surrounded him and looked around vigilantly. Zhu Wuji pointed his horsewhip into the distance and laughed loudly. "Haha, so this is the famous Soaring Eagle Cavalry? Haha, they're just useless people." He was thin and had a protruding mouth and cheeks, which made him look rather wretched. However, his voice was unusually loud, and his laughter echoed far and wide. A thin middle-aged man stood beside him and stroked his beard. "They learned from us after all, so they don't have enough experience in battle formations. It's a shame that they almost succeeded in their sneak attack. What a shame! What a shame! Elder Jing, whose side are you on?" Zhu Wuji laughed. "If word of this gets out, you'll be charged with colluding with the enemy." The thin middle-aged man stroked his beard and laughed. "I'm just sorry that their plan wasn't thorough enough. It's such a pity and makes me feel uncomfortable." War horses galloped, horses neighed, and people screamed. Dust billowed and shrouded the battlefield of more than 2,000 people. It was a tragic sight. The fallen riders were trampled by the war horses. Their internal organs were unharmed due to their armor, but their limbs were broken. They wouldn't have taken advantage of the opportunity. Zhu Wuji curled his lips. "They're a bunch of useless people. Their reputation is all talk. General, it seems like we're missing a group of people." The thin middle-aged man observed for a while and counted with his fingers. He frowned. "Why don't I see the Sharp Vigor Battalion? They are a surprise troop, we have to guard against them." "Haha, we've wiped out the entire Sharp Vigor Battalion," Zhu Wuji said with a laugh. "They're just 2 or 3 weaklings. They're nothing to worry about. It's better to be careful." The scrawny middle-aged man said, "Yang Ping is able to reach such a high position at such a young age. We can't underestimate him." "Don't you know what kind of trash Yang Ping is?" Zhu Wuji curled his lips and said disdainfully, "What an idiot! He's only relying on the fact that he has a good older sister as his concubine." "You do have some skills," the thin middle-aged man said with a smile. "Are you afraid that elite battalion will assassinate me?" "Ha!" The scrawny middle-aged man looked around and said with a frown, "We have to be on guard. We only have 100 protectors. If there are more than 100 soldiers from the Sharp Vigor Battalion, I'm afraid, with the military flag here, no matter how powerful an expert is, he's just an ordinary person. How can he block the attack of my 100 guards?" Zhu Wuji laughed heartily as he shook his head and said, "Old Jing, you're being overly cautious. You're being overly suspicious. Perhaps that brat Yang Ping is doing this on purpose." The scrawny middle-aged man shook his head. "Little Zheng, little Meng, you've reached the mountain." The scrawny middle-aged man frowned and said, "General, let's retreat." "How many of them?" Zhu Wuji raised his voice. His voice was as loud as a bell as it reverberated up the mountain. 23. "Haha, 23 of them want to deal with me? They really don't know what death is." Zhu Wuji laughed out loud. "Kill them all. Old Jing, I'll leave them to you." "Yes." Although the scrawny middle-aged man did not agree, He could only obey the general's order. He gave a fist salute and dismounted from his horse. Then, he strode out with 50 cavalrymen. Chu Li led the charge with Su Zihong and Fan Yang by his side. The three of them unsheathed their long blades. Before they even saw the scrawny middle-aged man, Chu Li shouted, "Shoot!" Although his inner energy was suppressed, the omniscient mirror and the manifestation of nature restoration were unhindered. He could clearly see Zhu Wuji and the scrawny middle-aged man's every move and even their thoughts. Zhu Wuji's carelessness was a good thing because they could make use of it. However, the scrawny middle-aged man's cautiousness was troublesome. It was best to get rid of him first. Fortunately, Zhu Wuji was headstrong and would not listen to anyone else's advice. Hence, the scrawny middle-aged man's words might not work. When they heard Chu Li's shout, the men did not hesitate to shoot arrows even though they did not see anyone. The arrows fell like rain. When they were about to hit the ground, the scrawny middle-aged man and his men rushed out from behind a boulder and faced the rain of arrows. Ding, ding, ding. They quickly waved their circular blades to block the arrows and paused. During this pause, Chu Li and his men had already rushed over with their blades. Ding, 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 ding. Chu Li rushed at the front and swung his blade at lightning speed. With Su Zihong and Fan Yang protecting him from both sides, the three of them pierced into the 50 men like a triangular wedge. Chu Li's body was strong. He could fight against a grandmaster without using his inner energy, let alone these ordinary cavalrymen who could not withstand a single blow from his blade. The fact that they took the lead inspired the others. The 20 men stepped on the formation and spun forward like a chainsaw. Wherever they passed, scimitars were sent flying and bodies were cut. In the blink of an eye, they had pierced through 50 men, leaving only wounded men on the ground. They rushed toward Zhu Wuji and his men without hesitation. When the scrawny middle-aged man saw that the situation was bad, he rushed up the mountain and shot a signal into the sky. Boom! A thunderclap sounded in the sky. The flying Cloud cavalry, who were fighting fiercely under the yellow dust, immediately retreated. 500-man teams rushed toward General Zhu Wuji, while the remaining 5 teams stayed behind to distract the soaring Eagle cavalry. Although they were at a disadvantage, they were still able to hold them back. "What's going on?" Yang Ping looked into the distance and frowned when he saw someone charging toward Zhu Wuji. Since Chu Li and his men were wearing the armor of the Flying Cloud cavalry and had covered their faces, they did not recognize Chu Li and his men. "General, are they having an internal conflict?" Jiang Jinfu was overjoyed. "God is helping soaring Eagle cavalry." "Yes, it's highly possible." Yang Ping nodded slowly. "Pass down my order. Pursue them with all your might. No matter what, we must reach the Flying Cloud cavalry's martial flag." "Yes." Jiang Jinfu responded and started beating the drum behind him. Chapter 38:30. Jiang Jinfu hit the drum and suddenly shouted, "General, it looks like the Sharp Vigor Battalion." When he saw the bright, circular blade gleam, he immediately recognized that it was the Sharp Vigor Battalion's formation. "How dare they?" Yang Ping's expression darkened. "They're courting death." "General, they're trying to kill Zhu Wuji." Jiang Jinfu shouted. "Their formation is very powerful. Look, look!" He cried out in shock. Everyone widened their eyes and looked over. They realized that the 23 men were invincible. The 50 men tried their best to block them but could not stop them. The blade gleam was like a chainsaw that cut through everything in its way and kept advancing. "What a pity!" Yang Ping shook his head. He saw Zhu Wuji quickly retreat with 10 men and gallop down the mountain. He estimated that they would soon join the 500 men. No matter how powerful 20 men were, they could not survive against 500 cavalrymen. Moreover, they could not do anything to the cavalrymen since they did not ride on horses. In just a short while, Zhu Wuji had already retreated far away and was out of danger. The assassination was considered a failure. Yang Ping felt slightly regretful but also fortunate. He regretted that Chu Li could not kill Zhu Wuji and make a great contribution. The Sharp Vigor Battalion's contribution was also Soaring Eagle Cavalry's contribution. He was glad that Chu Li did not succeed. Otherwise, he would have been promoted to a centurion and left the Sharp Vigor Battalion. Sigh, we were so close. Jiang Jinfu stomped his foot. He was anxious for Chu Li and the others. At this time, he could not care less about personal grudges and kill Zhu Wuji first. Soaring Eagle Cavalry would have won a great victory and everyone would be rewarded. A battle of emotions was not as important as a contribution. Chu Li swung his blade and cut off one of the men's arms. His physical advantage was obvious here. Facing these cavalrymen was like an adult bullying a child. No one could block his blade. However, no matter how fast he swung his blade, these men were not afraid of death. They used their bodies to block his blade without hesitation and killed them one by one. Sigh, we were so close. Jiang Jinfu kept stomping his foot. He could not wait to help. Everyone was so anxious that they kept stomping their feet. It was a rare opportunity to be able to get so close, but they had almost succeeded. They were so close. When Chu Li saw that Zhu Wuji had already run 100 meters away and was getting further away, he disappeared in a flash and reappeared in front of Zhu Wuji's horse. Then, he swung his blade. Nay. The steed neighed as it reared up, wanting to avoid the blade. Although Zhu Wuji looked wretched on the horse, he was valiant and domineering. Without hesitation, he brandished his saber and charged forward. Chu Li disappeared again in a flash. His body was in midair, and he did not care about an arrow that was shot at him. He allowed it to shoot into his chest and swung his blade down. This saber strike was like a bolt of lightning, fast and fierce, pressing forward with an indomitable will. Rip! Zhu Wuji's head flew into the air. Chu Li staggered and landed on the ground. He lowered his head to look at the arrow that had pierced through his chest. He then raised his head to look at a middle-aged knight not far away. This middle-aged knight was controlling his horse and standing on top of a rock, looking down from above. His eyes were cold and emotionless. He knocked his bow again and shot an arrow. The tip of the arrow flashed with a strange red light, as if it was smeared with fresh blood. Chu Li was wearing armor and a floating silkworm treasured clothing underneath, which made him almost invulnerable. However, there was no such thing as invincible in this world. The floating silkworm treasured clothing was not indestructible, and this arrow had managed to break it. Swoosh! Another arrow was shot. Chu Li waved his blade lightly. Ding! The long arrow was effortlessly cut down by his blade. In order to kill Zhu Wuji just now, he could not afford to miss this fleeting opportunity. Even though he had sensed that he should have dodged this arrow, he ignored it. Otherwise, the middle-aged knight's arrow would not have hit him at all. He could have easily dodged it. The middle-aged knight's most threatening weapon was the tip of the arrow. He stared coldly at the knight and shouted, "Retreat!" Su Zihong shouted, "Master Zhao, let's go! You guys retreat first." Chu Li shouted, "I'll cover you." "Master Zhao, be careful." Fan Yang hurriedly said, "Let's go." Su Zihong glanced at Chu Li and retreated with Fan Yang and the 20 men. After witnessing how Chu Li cut down his enemies so easily, they knew that they would only be a burden if they stayed behind. The best thing to do was to leave early so that they would not be a burden to him. The knights ignored Su Zihong and the others as they charged toward Chu Li madly. They charged at him recklessly and swore to kill him. The thin middle-aged man stood at the top of the mountain and shouted, "Whoever can kill this guy will be rewarded with 10,000 taels of gold and promoted to a chiliarch." Since he was standing tall, his voice could be heard even without using his inner energy. Apart from the loyal protectors, the 500 cavalrymen at the foot of the mountain also charged toward him. Chu Li picked up Zhu Wuji's severed head and wrapped it in a cloth bundle before he ran back. He desperately absorbed spiritual energy from all directions. Although it was suppressed, he could still use some of it. This bit of spiritual energy allowed him to use his light body technique and move as fast as a galloping horse. On this road in the forest, he could not run as fast as a galloping horse. Wherever he passed, anyone who blocked his way would be cut in half with a single slash of his blade. After a while, there was no one in front of him anymore. Only the people who were chasing after him were shooting arrows at him. Chuli waved his long blade. Coupled with the shield behind him, he could easily protect himself as long as the arrows did not hit his head. Swoosh! He suddenly turned around and slashed down with his blade. The arrow shot by the middle-aged knight was cut down. Among the crowd, this arrow posed the greatest threat. The others were not worth worrying about. Even if the arrow could penetrate the shield, he still had the floating silkworm treasured clothing. Chuli turned around and continued running. As he ran, he could feel his inner energy and strength flowing out along with the arrow in his chest. Although the speed was not fast, it was constantly flowing out. If this continued, he would soon become weak. Without hesitation, he swung his blade and cut off the tail of the arrow. Then, he pressed down hard, causing the tip of the arrow to pierce through his back. Blood gushed out. The tip of the arrow was hooked, so it was easy to advance but difficult to retreat. Once it was pulled out, the injury would be even more severe. Chuli first tied the bundle that contained Zhu Wuji's severed head to his waist. Then, he took out a jade bottle from his inner pocket and poured out a snow-white pill before stuffing it into the bleeding wound. In just a short while, the bleeding had stopped and an ice-cold aura surged around the wound. Chuli sighed. Fortunately, he had prepared a high-grade spirit pill. It was better to be safe than sorry. He initially thought that he would not need it, but he did not expect to use it so soon. He moved very quickly and the distance between him and the arrows could no longer reach him. The cavalrymen of Flying Cloud Cavalry were in hot pursuit. When they saw the general's severed head dangling from Chuli's waist, they were furious and would not give up. They were determined to catch up to Chuli and kill him even if they had to chase him to the ends of the world. Buzz! The sound of a bull's horn could be heard. The scrawny middle-aged man stood at the top of the mountain and blew into the bull's horn. When the 500 men who were guarding the rear heard the sound of the bull's horn, they quickly turned around and charged toward Chuli and the others to block their way down the mountain. There were 500 men chasing after them from behind and another 500 men blocking their way in front. Good! Yang Ping shouted and punched his palm as he said resentfully, "It's good that he died." It was supposed to be a great defeat since Soaring Eagle Cavalry was far inferior to Flying Cloud Cavalry. But now, they had achieved a great victory. Jiang Jinfu shouted joyfully, "Zhu Wuji is dead. Congratulations, General." Yang Ping scoffed. "Let's see how the battle goes first." Chapter 38-31. P.S. Update complete. When he thought of this, his joy faded away and he felt very unhappy. The 500 soldiers of Flying Cloud Cavalry were not in the mood to fight anymore. They fought as they moved to stop Chuli and the others. Even so, the 800 soldiers of Soaring Eagle Cavalry could not do anything to them. Their archery skills were not as good. If they got too close, they would be shot dead. Even if they were too far away, they could not do anything to them. Soaring Eagle Cavalry's morale gradually dropped, so they became less aggressive in their pursuit. Chuli ran as fast as a galloping horse and soon caught up with Su Zihong and the others. He laughed and said, "We've succeeded. Get on the horses and run east." "Aren't we going back?" Su Zihong asked. Chuli shook his head. "The way back is blocked. Let's go down the mountain first." "All right." Su Zihong laughed. This was a great battle. Great, it was really great. Fan Yang laughed. Everyone could not suppress their excitement. 20 men had accomplished something that 1,000 men could not. They had killed the general of Flying Cloud Cavalry. This was a rare feat. They rushed into the forest at the foot of the mountain and got on their horses. They changed their armors as they galloped to their original ones. Then, they rushed toward another mountain. By the time the 400 soldiers caught up, they had already entered the mountain. They let go of their horses and disappeared. Once they entered the mountain, their inner energy recovered without the suppression of the military flag, and they moved even faster. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror and the nature restoration manifestation to predict the future. With the two combined, he played hide-and-seek with the 400 soldiers. From time to time, he would make some fake tracks to lead them astray. However, Flying Cloud Cavalry also had tracking experts who could keep up with them. However, with Chu Li's elusive light body technique and his incredibly powerful light blade, they succumbed to their hatred one by one and were silently killed by dozens of them. As time passed, their anger and excitement subsided. They became rational and valued their lives more. Gradually, they became afraid and did not dare to continue the chase. Soaring Eagle Cavalry set up camp and blocked the only way to the east gate. Flying Cloud Cavalry was a mile away. The two armies were facing each other and waiting for Chu Li and the others to appear. Once they appeared, Soaring Eagle Cavalry would come to their aid, and Flying Cloud Cavalry would attack. It would be another fierce battle. Flying Cloud Cavalry would forever be humiliated if they could not kill Chu Li and the others. The entire Flying Cloud Cavalry was filled with grief and anger as if they would go crazy at any time. As the saying goes, an army with indignation is bound to win. Yang Ping was not confident. As time passed, the rest of the Flying Cloud Cavalry's troops returned. The 800 of them did not pale in comparison to Soaring Eagle Cavalry. Yang Ping knew that Soaring Eagle Cavalry would be defeated if a fight broke out, so he had no choice but to seek help from the Grand General. However, time continued to pass, and there was still no sign of Chu Li and the others. It was as if they had disappeared into the deep mountains far away. Everyone in Soaring Eagle Cavalry began to worry. If it were not for the fact that Flying Cloud Cavalry had not retreated, they would have concluded that Chu Li and the others were already dead. Yang Ping learned from Zhu Wuji's lesson and set up camp in the army. Inside the central tent, the centurions gathered together to discuss their next move. The great general had ordered them to withdraw their troops and return to the city. The Qiu dynasty was about to attack the city. The death of a general had completely enraged the Qiu dynasty's cavalrymen. The Qiu dynasty's great general of the north had issued an order to massacre everyone in the city once the city was breached. A war was about to break out. If they did not return to the city now, it was very likely that the Qiu dynasty's cavalrymen would attack them from the back and they would not be able to return to the city. Although Chu Li and the other 23 men had contributed greatly, they could only leave them be for now. Hopefully, they would be able to return safely. The moon was at its zenith. Everyone was sitting in a circle in the depths of the forest. A bonfire was blazing, and the roasted meat on the rack was sizzling. The aroma of oil dripping onto the firewood filled the air. Under the illumination of the bonfire, everyone seemed to be in high spirits. They did not seem to be in a sorry state after being chased by the enemy at all. "We've finally shaken them off completely." Su Zihong sighed. "It wasn't easy at all." Chu Li nodded. "We can go back now." Huang Hu smiled and asked, "Master Zhao, can we leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion after we return?" Chu Li shook his head. Huang Hu hurriedly asked, "No?" Chu Li replied, "Your situation is even more dangerous." "Why?" Huang Hu was indignant. "We've killed a general and a chiliarch. Isn't that a great contribution? Can't we leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion?" Chu Li replied, "I can be promoted to a centurion and leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion, but you guys aren't strong enough. After all, you have a lot of people. If you want to leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion, you'll need to perform a great contribution." "I see." Everyone sighed helplessly. They knew that Chu Li was right. After all, they only assisted in the assassination and did not attack Zhu Wuji. It was Chu Li who caught up with Zhu Wuji at the critical moment. It was mostly Chu Li's ability that killed Zhu Wuji. Someone else would not have been able to do it. Then we'll think of a way to perform another contribution. Su Daxing laughed. It's not a big deal. Chu Li shook his head. Su Daxing said, Master Zhao, we have the formation that you taught us. It'll be easy for us to perform a contribution. How can there be such a good thing? Chu Li shook his head. The Sharp Vigor Battalion hasn't been dispatched because the general doesn't want me to perform a contribution. He's worried about my identity as a disciple of the Holy Church of Light. He's afraid that something will happen to me. However, once I'm promoted to a centurion and leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion, he won't have to worry about me anymore. Do you think he'll let all of you go together? Chu Li's words made everyone's faces turn gloomy. Su Zihong sighed. Yes, the Sharp Vigor Battalion usually goes out in groups of 3. They won't send all of them out at once. Therefore, it's impossible for anyone to leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion based on a contribution. Master Zhao alone is enough. Fan Yang sighed. It's not just you, the two of us are the same. What should we do then? Huang Hu asked. Master Zhao, you won't just watch us die, right? Chu Li said, There's a way, but it depends on whether you're willing to take it. What way? Please tell us, Master Zhao. Su Daxing quickly said, Master Zhao's way won't be bad. Chu Li pointed at the top of the mountain. There's a stockade village on this mountain. You can enter this stockade village to seek shelter. Their identities were sensitive and they were all murderers. If it was not for the fact that they would help him perform a contribution, he would not care about their lives. Good people did not live long, while bad people lived for thousands of years. None of them died in this operation. They were indeed tough. Good idea. Su Zihong quickly said. Are we going to become bandits? Su Daxing shook his head. This is the stockade village of the Qiu dynasty, right? This group of people has committed many evil deeds. Let's go and get rid of them first. Chu Li said, If you don't want to become bandits, find a way to enter the Qiu dynasty and live the rest of your lives in peace. Don't even think about going back to the Li dynasty. I'll say that you've all died in battle. Master Zhao, I still have a mother, Su Daxing quickly said. Chu Li frowned. You still want to take care of your mother until she dies? Yes. Su Daxing quickly nodded. Chu Li scoffed. You're already a prisoner on death row. You're dead. Master Zhao. Su Daxing quickly said, I only have a mother. I want to bring my mother over. Is that okay? It's a long journey. She's old and might not be able to hold on, Chu Li said. It's better to let your mother enjoy her life. Are you the only child in your family? I have a big brother, Su Daxing said. Chu Li glanced at him without saying a word. Then, he turned to look at the others. Is there anything else you want to say? When the others saw his attitude, they knew that it was useless to say anything else, so they could only shake their heads. Chu Li scoffed. You've helped me perform a meritorious deed, and I'll help you keep your lives. It's a fair deal. Don't go to the Li dynasty again, or you'll be in endless trouble. If you can't stand it anymore, tell Fan Yang and Su Zihong. They'll contact me. Yes. The others nodded. Hurry up and eat. Then, we'll go and destroy that stockade village, Chu Li said. Chapter 38-32. In the middle of the night, everyone moved and silently occupied the stronghold. For the sake of the future, they didn't exterminate them directly. They only killed the leader and left those who surrendered. Out of the 300 people in the stronghold, more than 20 had died, so they made up for it. Chu Li stood beside a forest outside the mountain village, as Su Zihong and Fan Yang saw him off. The morning sun shone on the forest, and the mottled shadows fell on them. Chu Li looked at the two of them. Elder Fan, Elder Su, what are your plans? Do you want to spend the rest of your lives here, or do you want to return? We want to go back. Su Zihong sighed. Fan Yang said, the fallen leaves return to their roots. It's still more comfortable to stay in Dali. They knew that they would definitely die if they joined the Sharp Vigor Battalion, but they also wanted to live in the Li dynasty. Life was not going their way. If they could leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion, they would definitely not stay here. Chu Li took out 2 secret manuals and handed them over. There's a bone-shrinking secret skill here. Once you've mastered it, you'll be able to change your appearance. He took out 2 jade tablets from his bosom and handed them to them. You may bring these tablets to see me. Su Zihong and Fan Yang heaved a sigh of relief and cupped their fists. They were grateful for Chu Li's thoughtfulness and meticulousness. It was not safe for them to change their appearances because grandmasters were too conspicuous. They were like white cranes in a flock of chickens, they could be seen and recognized at a glance. Sooner or later, their identities would be exposed, and when that time came, it would be a monstrous disaster. However, it was different for Chu Li. He was a disciple of the Holy Church of Light and a branch leader. As long as he joined the branch of the Holy Church of Light, he would have a protective talisman and would no longer have to worry about the military's investigation. They could only live in peace under Chu Li's command. Otherwise, they might as well not go back and live in fear. All right, let's go back. Chu Li waved his hand and said in a low voice, I'll probably be promoted to a centurion after I go back this time. I'll see if I can transfer you guys out of the Sharp Vigor Battalion to be my subordinate. If I succeed, you guys can go back. If not, you guys can stay here and keep them in check. If anyone tries to cause trouble, just kill them. Don't let them get into trouble and drag you guys into it. Yes. The 2 cupped their fists. Chu Li nodded and glided into the forest, disappearing before their eyes. As the sun set, the siege came to a halt. The area outside Falling Autumn City was filled with the stench of blood. There was no one outside the city, but the moans of the injured soldiers lingered in Yang Ping's ears. Yang Ping's expression was ugly as he walked along the city wall with a few protectors. Soaring Eagle Cavalry was responsible for the defense of the East City Gate and the East City Wall. He leaned on the city wall and looked down at the vast land outside the city. The twilight was rising, and they couldn't see too far. However, they could see the blood on the ground, the broken siege weapons, the blood-stained round stones, the broken armor and arrows. The dead had been dragged away to be cremated to prevent the plague from spreading. Sigh. Yang Ping shook his head and sighed. The siege of the city was too cruel, and Soaring Eagle Cavalry had lost another 50 men during the day. Even though a batch of 400 men had been recruited from other places, these men were new soldiers who had never been involved in a battle. No matter how well they were trained, they would not be of much use to them. Soaring Eagle Cavalry's strength seemed to have increased, but that was not the case. General, look! Who's that? Jiang Jinfu suddenly shouted. Yang Ping looked over and saw a man walking out of the twilight. He was walking slowly towards the east gate. He could see that the man was Zhao Dave, and there was a bundle hanging on his waist. Yang Ping knew that it must be Zhu Wuji's severed head. Chu Li suddenly stopped and turned to look at the 3 men who were charging toward him. Monk Zhishan's red cowl fluttered as he glided toward Chu Li with 2 other elders and surrounded him. Chu Li frowned and said coldly, Zhishan, I was just about to settle the score with you. The tall and burly monk Zhishan bowed with pressed palms. Namo Amitba. His Buddhist chants echoed far and wide. The martial arts masters in the city could vaguely hear the commotion, but they ignored it. They hated monk Zhishan to the core, but there was nothing they could do. Fortunately, there was a military camp set up in the city. Through the suppression of the military formation, the martial arts masters would only have 10 to 20% of their martial arts power left. The difference between them and ordinary soldiers was very small, and a few soldiers were enough to suppress the martial arts masters. With that, monk Zhishan dared not come again. Chu Li looked at the other 2 elders, one with a blade and the other with a sword. Are you from Haitsong Mountain and Royal Blade Palace? Chu Li asked slowly. That's right, Zhao Dai. We were just about to settle the score with you. The elder with the blade said. You owe us a life. Same here. The elder from Haitsong Mountain said. Chu Li shook his head. You can't stop me. We'll see. The elder from Haitsong Mountain sneered. You took our treasure swords, didn't you? Chu Li's face darkened as he thought of Li Ruolin. Back then, the two of them had obtained 2 treasure swords. One was for himself, and the other was given to Li Ruolin. The treasure swords were still there, but they were gone. He glanced at Monk Zhishan and swung his arm. Ding! A lunar chakram appeared in Monk Zhishan's sleeve and blocked the light blade. Chu Li appeared dozens of meters away in a flash. His time steps were superb, and the people on the city wall were amazed. Monk Zhishan disappeared in a flash and reappeared in front of Chu Li, slapping him with his palm. The elders from Royal Blade Palace and Haitsong Mountain attacked at the same time. Their swords were as fast as lightning, and their blades were as fast as lightning. He wanted to go to the east gate, but Monk Zhishan blocked his way, causing him to move further and further away from the east gate. The crowd was anxious, but they dared not go down. Once they were out of the city, they would no longer be under the pressure of the military formation. They were no match for Monk Zhishan, and they were afraid of him. They knew that they could not help and would only get themselves killed. Chu Li suddenly went up to Monk Zhishan, and their palms collided. Boom! A loud sound was heard when their palms collided. When their palms touched each other, their palm energy changed constantly. It was hard to defend against it. Monk Zhishan looked at Chu Li in surprise. He did not expect Chu Li's palm energy to be on par with his. It was obvious that Chu Li had mastered the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture and had a deeper understanding of it. This was a great threat to him. When he thought of this, his killing intent soared and he stopped probing. Swoosh! A solar chakram appeared and a white light shot toward Chu Li. Chu Li tilted his body and at the same time a flying blade shot out. The white light brushed past Chu Li, but the flying blade shot into Monk Zhishan's sleeve and hit his wrist. Chu Li's nature restoration manifestation had improved greatly on the battlefield. He could not tell if it was because of the murderous aura or the military flag, but he had improved by leaps and bounds. His analysis and prediction skills had improved greatly. He had already predicted Monk Zhishan's moves, so he was prepared and responded in advance. Chu Li suddenly slashed at the elder from Haitsong Mountain at lightning speed. The elder swung his sword to meet the attack, but Chu Li's blade force suddenly changed from fierce to gentle. It slid along the blade to the hilt, which frightened the elder so much that he quickly retreated. Monk Zhishan's face turned gloomy. He had never been so seriously injured. Now that he could not use his left hand, it was difficult for him to deal with Chu Li's flying blade. His killing intent intensified. It would be terrifying for such a powerful person to grow. It had not been long since they last met, but Chu Li had improved so much that it was shocking. The two of them were enemies, and Zhao Dai would definitely avenge Li Ruolin. There was no possibility of reconciliation, so he had to kill him before he became too powerful. Chu Li suddenly disappeared from the spot and reappeared 200 feet away, closer to the east gate. As soon as he appeared, he shot out a blade, followed by 2 blades. Monk Zhishan happened to appear at the same time, so he quickly used his lunar chakram to deflect the blades. The other 2 blades appeared almost at the same time. Since he could not move his left hand, he could only dodge them while blocking them with his other hand. Chu Li disappeared again in a flash, and he was closer to the east gate. Monk Zhishan disappeared in a flash. As soon as he reappeared, 2 flying blades shot toward him at the same time. He could only dodge one and block the other. 2 more flying blades shot toward him, not giving him a chance to catch his breath. Chu Li suddenly disappeared, and he broke away from the blade and sword. However, Monk Zhishan could not disappear, or else he would not be able to dodge the flying blade. The faces of the two elders from Haitsong Mountain and Royal Blade Palace turned red, and they moved faster. Chapter 38-33. Chu Li pondered as he sat on his horse. He was just an ordinary soldier. He was neither a sergeant nor a centurion. He was not even a chiliarch or a 10,000-man commander. He was far from the Grand General and had never met the Grand General before. No matter how much the Grand General loved his soldiers, he would not remember an ordinary soldier. Did the Grand General want to see him because of his identity as a disciple of the Holy Church of Light, or because he had made a great contribution by killing Flying Cloud Cavalry's general, Zhu Wuji? Chu Li looked around as he galloped forward. The streets were empty and spacious. Few people were walking around and every household had shut their doors. Most of the people had left Falling Autumn City and settled in the rear to avoid death. Once war broke out, the people were treated like dogs. Chu Li sighed to himself. Unfortunately, the people could not make their own decisions. They wanted to live a peaceful life but could not. If they wanted to live a better life in this world, they could only desperately climb up. Soon, they arrived at the town defense prefecture. After they dismounted, they followed the leader of the strong cavalrymen into the town defense prefecture and arrived at the main hall. Reporting to the Grand General, Zhao Dai from Soaring Eagle Cavalry is here, the cavalryman said. Come in. A clear voice was heard. Chu Li stepped into the main hall. On the north side of the hall was a high platform with 5 steps. On the platform there was a table and an armchair. There was a tiger skin on the armchair, and on the tiger skin sat a thin middle-aged man. The beard under his chin fluttered in the wind, and he looked very elegant. His eyes were like cold stars that could see through people's hearts. 2 protectors with swords stood at the bottom of the platform. They held their swords and stared at him. Chu Li glanced at the screens on both sides and saw 4 powerful soldiers hidden behind them. Where are your soldiers? Most of them were killed by the Flying Cloud Cavalry. The remaining 2 were seriously injured, and I'm not sure if they'll survive, Chu Li replied. He wanted to see if he could get Fan Yang and Su Zihong out. If he could not, he would say that they died. Sigh, a general's success is built on thousands of bones. Zhou Wuyang shook his head and did not care. Thank you, Grand General. Chu Li gave a fist salute and sighed in relief. With this position, he could leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion. Staying in the Sharp Vigor Battalion seemed to be safe, and Yang Ping did not dare to send him out. However, who knew if he would change his mind in the next moment? Yang Ping was a fickle person, and his life could be at the mercy of a single thought. You have a spirit, fearless of the enemy, and fearless of death, Zhou Wuyang said. This is exactly what the Great Li army lacks at the moment. Do you want to continue to fight? He knew Chu Li's identity, which was why he asked. The status of the branch leader of the Holy Church of Light was very high. Otherwise, he would have been able to keep Zhao Dai here, and there would have been no need to discuss it with him. Most importantly, Zhao Dai was a genius in martial arts and was highly regarded by the saint of the Holy Church of Light. He did not want to fall out with the saint. Chu Li asked, Grand General, if I join the war, can I lead the army? The nature restoration manifestation had improved tremendously during the war. If it were not for the improvement of the nature restoration manifestation, it would not have been so easy to deal with Monk Zhishan. Monk Zhishan's movement technique was superb and his thoughts were unpredictable. He was too difficult to deal with. If Chu Li wanted to kill Monk Zhishan, the fastest way was not to improve his cultivation level. At his current cultivation level, it was very difficult to improve it unless he had another fortuitous encounter. The fastest way was to improve the nature restoration manifestation. He was getting more and more aware of the magical effects of the nature restoration manifestation. The feeling of having everything under control was fascinating and would be of great help to him in the future. Lead the army. Zhou Wuyang stroked his beard and pondered. In the end, he shook his head. Although you're a centurion, it's impossible to give you 100 men. You can only be a sergeant and work your way up. If you don't know how to lead the army, not only will you harm your subordinates, but you'll also harm yourself. Chu Li nodded without batting an eyelid. Zhou Wuyang said, if you stay, you can join the infantry and train them with formations. You might be able to make more contributions. Thank you, Grand General. Chu Li gave a fist salute. Please allow me to consider it. The war has begun. It's time to serve the imperial court. Think about it. Zhou Wuyang stroked his beard and nodded. Very well, you may leave now. The reward will be given out soon. Chu Li thanked him again and took his leave. After he left the town defense prefecture, he frowned. The position of sergeant was indeed too low. Moreover, the lower his position was, the more helpless he would be. Should he stay here and improve his nature restoration manifestation, or return to Gale City? He slowly returned to Soaring Eagle Cavalry's barracks in the east of the city. As soon as he entered the barracks, Jiang Jinfu was already waiting for him. Hurry up and follow me. Jiang Jinfu waved his hand and said impatiently, the general is already waiting. Chu Li gave a fist salute and did not say much. Jiang Jinfu could not be bothered to say anything else. Chu Li had killed Zhu Wuji and saved Soaring Eagle Cavalry from being defeated. Jiang Jinfu had been very excited at that time. However, after the incident, his feelings of hatred and jealousy toward Chu Li had subsided. Chapter 38-34. P.S. Update complete. In the Soaring Eagle Cavalry's tent, Yang Ping stood in front of Chu Li with his hands behind his back. Their faces were so close that they could hear each other's breathing. Chu Li felt uneasy as he was not used to being in such close contact with men. Yang Ping, on the other hand, was sizing him up with great interest. He didn't say anything and just stared at him carefully from head to toe, as if he was looking at something interesting. He seemed to be probing. Although Chu Li felt uneasy, he remained calm and suppressed the urge to punch him away. After a while, footsteps were heard from outside. General, the Grand General's order is here. Give it to me. Yang Ping looked at Chu Li and ordered without blinking. Jiang Jinfu came in with a letter and presented it with both hands. Yang Ping continued to stare at Chu Li and extended his hand. Jiang Jinfu quickly took out the letter and handed it to him. Yang Ping opened the letter and glanced at it before looking back. The Grand General has appointed you as a centurion. Congratulations, Zhao Dave, you've finally escaped from the abyss of misery. It's all thanks to the general. Chu Li fist saluted. Although Yang Ping did not allow him to go out because of his identity and did not dare to offend the saint, he had indeed given him the opportunity to train those 20 fellows so that he could leave the Sharp Vigor Battalion. If Yang Ping was fearless and sent him out to risk his life, he might not have had the time to train 20 people. Yang Ping scoffed. I don't deserve it. Chu Li smiled and did not say anything else. Yang Ping suddenly turned around and sat behind the table. He said coldly, Zhao Dai, you can leave now. Pack your things and leave immediately. Chu Li fist saluted and left. Yang Ping stared at his back and gritted his teeth. Jiang Jinfu asked, General, are we letting him go just like that? What else can we do? Yang Ping gave him a sidelong glance. Jiang Jinfu quickly said, He's still a member of the Sharp Vigor Battalion. There's going to be a big battle tomorrow. Let him participate. It's better to have one more person. Is your brain eaten by a dog? Yang Ping suddenly shouted angrily, Let him defend the city? If anything happens to him, how am I going to explain it to the saint? Jiang Jinfu lowered his head and said nothing. Get lost. Yang Ping slammed the table. Jiang Jinfu retreated from the central tent in a sorry state and wiped the sweat off his forehead. The general's temper was unpredictable, sometimes like a gentle breeze and drizzle, sometimes like a violent storm. No one knew when he would change. If he said one more sentence when he was angry, he would inevitably be punished by military law. When Chuli returned to the Sharp Vigor Battalion, the entire battalion was empty. When he arrived at his own tent, he noticed that no one had touched it. It was still the same as before. He sat on his bed and began to think about his way out. Should he stay in the army and cultivate the nature restoration manifestation, or should he return to Gale City and live a carefree life as a branch leader? After a while, he decided to return to the Great Light Peak. He was not in a hurry to cultivate the nature restoration manifestation yet. The war between the Li dynasty and the Qiu dynasty had just begun, and there would be plenty of opportunities to fight. Now was not the best time. The light in the hall was soft, and the afternoon sun shone on the windows. The Holy Virgin, Sun Mingyue, sat quietly behind the desk and looked at him. "You want to leave the army?" Chuli replied, "I'll follow your wishes, Saint. If you want me to come back, I'll come back. If you want me to stay in the army, I'll stay." Sun Mingyue smiled faintly and looked at him. "Since when have you become so obedient?" Chuli replied, "I'm no longer who I used to be. You've changed a lot." Sun Mingyue nodded. "It's a waste for a master like you to stay in the army. Return to Gale City and continue to be a branch leader. You don't have any objections, do you?" "Yes, Saint." Chuli Fist saluted. Sun Mingyue said, "Be obedient when you go back. If there's anything urgent, I'll send you to handle it." "Yes." Chuli nodded. Seeing how obedient he was, Sun Mingyue suddenly felt a little dispirited. The previous Zhao Day was more interesting. He did not keep anything in his heart. Even if she could not see his thoughts because of Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, she could still see through his thoughts. Now, Zhao Day had become a stranger. He was calm and scheming, but he was harder to control. "Go, go." Sun Mingyue waved her hand. Chuli Fist saluted and left. Sun Mingyue looked at his back as he left and sighed softly. It seemed like Li Ruolin's death was a huge blow to him, causing his temperament to change. He must have been thinking about revenge and cultivating desperately. If this went on, she did not know if it would be a blessing or a curse. It would be bad if he became obsessed with cultivation. She had to give him something to do so that he would not be stuck in a dead end. Chuli left Great Light Peak and returned to his residence in adjacent town. It was evening and the courtyard was bathed in a rose-red color by the setting sun. Shao Qi was practicing her swordsmanship in the courtyard. Her movements were slow and calm, but her sword flashed continuously like a waterfall. She wore a snow-white gown and her face was as white as jade. When she swung her long sword, there was no trace of worldly aura. She looked like a fairy dancing with her sword, which stunned Chuli. She gently sheathed her sword and gracefully walked into the gazebo. "I've received a message." Chuli smiled. "What message?" "King An has returned to the residence," Shao Qi said. Chuli frowned. As long as King An returned to the residence, nothing good would happen. He scoffed. "Did he master martial arts? I heard that after mastering the divine technique, not only did his martial arts recover, but he also improved by leaps and bounds." Shao Qi shook her head. "The entire imperial residence has been cleansed by him." "What about Zhu Tianhua and the others?" Chu Li's frown deepened. Zhu Tianhua was severely injured. Lu Xing and the others were beaten up. Shao Qi said, "They were all heavily injured. Second eldest sister's protectors have been replaced with King An's men." Chu Li's face darkened. Shao Qi said, "But second eldest sister said that we don't have to worry. She can handle it." Chu Li scoffed. "Handle it? How can she handle it? There's still Master." Shao Qi said, "As long as Master is here, second eldest sister will be fine." Chu Li took a deep breath and suppressed his annoyance. Seo Shur had the Sarira prayer beads and a jade tag in her hands. She could call him any time she wanted. However, she did not mention anything about such a big incident and only mentioned it to Seo Chi. This made him rather angry. He wanted to go back immediately, but when he looked at Shao Chi, he suppressed his annoyance. He was not in a hurry. He asked calmly, "What divine technique did King and cultivate?" "I don't know." Shao Chi frowned and shook her head. "No one seems to know. But his martial arts is extremely powerful." Although Zhu Tianhua and the others were wary, they were defeated by him. "What about Senior Shin?" "He didn't fight with Master," Shao Chi said softly. "I don't know if he was wary of Master's martial arts or his identity. In short, King An has become overbearing. His authority in the residence is unparalleled, just like you in the past." Chu Li nodded slowly. Shao Chi said, "With your current situation, the people in the residence have lost their confidence. They don't dare to go against King An. He seems to be interested in second eldest sister. Or is it just to anger you?" Chu Li looked at her. Shao Chi said, "Let's go back tonight." Chu Li nodded slowly and suppressed his thoughts. "There are people from the High Duke's public house in the town?" Shao Chi smiled faintly. "Yes." Chu Li was surprised. Shao Chi said, "The foundation of the High Duke's public house is beyond your imagination. After so many years, the periphery is getting bigger and bigger. Sometimes, even I don't know." Chu Li nodded emotionally. This was the power of time. This was what he lacked. Chapter 38-35. The Tianshu courtyard was brightly lit. Seo Shur sat by the stone table in the courtyard. The plum tree in the courtyard had already begun to bloom, and the fragrance of the plum was faint. She held a book in one hand and quietly read. The bright and gentle light shone on her face, which was as white as jade and exuded a warm luster. Her eyes, which were quietly staring at the book, felt like a deep pool, making people sink into it and unable to extricate themselves. Suru stood quietly at the side, looking at her with some worry. The second miss had been depressed and listless these days, as if she had no energy to do anything. She was lazy and didn't care about anything. Even when the guards outside were changed, she was still calm, as if they weren't her guards. If it wasn't for the fact that she saw that there was nothing wrong with her body, she would have crushed the jade pendant to inform the 3rd Mississippi Menglon and Yang Su were busy in the kitchen. They were worried about the people of the Wang clan since they were going to cook personally. Ever since King An returned to the imperial residence, everything in the imperial residence had changed. The gazes of the people around them changed inexplicably, as if they were filled with pity. Everyone thought that the departure of the head chief was a new beginning, and the consort would no longer have protection. She would definitely be suppressed by the Royal Highness, and would have to listen to the Royal Highness obediently. Even if they, the guards and maids, wanted to help Wang Fei, they didn't dare to do so openly. After all, it was related to their own lives. One wrong move and they would be kicked out of the Wang Fu. "Suru, how long has it been?" Seo Shur suddenly put down her scroll and asked casually. Her watery eyes fell on Suru's face, devoid of emotion. Suru knew what she was asking and whispered, 1 month and 1 day. "Only a month?" Seo Shur frowned and shook her head. She picked up her book again. Suru said, "Second lady, we should inform Lady Xiao and the others and let them think about it. They're far away in the Imperial Mausoleum. What do they have in mind?" Seo Shur said calmly, "Moreover, it's not a big deal. Let's see how long he can keep this up. And even if something happens, they can't come back. Otherwise, it will be a huge disaster. Do you understand?" "But Chief will definitely have an idea," Suru quickly said. "Besides, there's still the lady." Of course, she understood that Chu Li could not return to the fairy's capital. Otherwise, he would be disobeying the decree, which was a crime punishable by death. My younger sister has finally married Chu Li. Congratulations. Xiao Shi chuckled and shook her head. The two of them have been through a lot, but fortunately, they're still together. Yes. Suru sighed softly. She knew what happened between Chu Li and Xiao Qi the best. There was a sudden clap of thunder in the silence. Outsiders could not see any twists and turns. It was as if the two of them had a smooth journey and came together naturally. Only those who were close to them knew what they had experienced, and that it was not easy for them to be together. Is there any gossip outside? Xiao Shi put down the scroll and asked with a frown. Suru said, It's inevitable that people will gossip and be jealous of you, head chief. These bastards. Xiao Shi pouted. They can always find a reason to gossip. You go ahead. I'll be alone for a while. Second lady, have some supper before you sleep, Suru said. I haven't had dinner yet. No need. Xiao Shi shook her head. I'm not hungry. As for His Royal Highness. Suru thought for a while and said in a low voice, I think His Royal Highness seems to have other ideas. It's better to prepare early. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to the public house first. Xiao Shi pondered and nodded. Returning to the High Duke's public house is good too. Suru was overjoyed. Xiao Shi said, But he can't hide forever. This guy has lost his mind. He'll be fine after a while. Suru said, We'll pressure him through the public house so that he won't act recklessly and know his limits. If it doesn't work, we'll just stay in the public house. He can't do anything about it. Xiao Shi nodded. Okay, let's do that for now. As the two of them were talking, a shadow suddenly flashed and Chu Li suddenly appeared. He waved his hand to interrupt the two of them and disappeared with Xiao Shi. The light in front of Xiao Shi was distorted, and she could not see anything clearly. When her eyes lit up again, she was already in an antique courtyard. Xiao Qi was standing in a pavilion in the courtyard. Her white shirt was spotless and her cold face showed a faint smile. Second sister? Xiao Shi pursed her lips and smiled. I've seen the bride. Second sister, you've lost weight. Xiao Qi blushed. Xiao Shi chuckled. I've lost weight but you haven't. Looks like you didn't suffer. I was worried for nothing. It's fine here. After dealing with a few ignorant people, they're all well behaved now. Xiao Qi said, Second sister, why didn't you tell us? The three of them sat at the stone table in the pavilion. Xiao Shi scoffed. You guys are already in a mess. Why bother? Besides, you guys just got married. Aren't you having a sweet time? I'm not going to be the bad guy. She glanced at Chu Li and scoffed. You're the most cunning one. You took advantage of the situation. Did you already know the rules here? You were waiting for little sister to fall into your trap. Chu Li smiled but did not say anything. Xiao Shi said, Did you purposely offend the emperor so that he would demote you to the imperial mausoleum and take the opportunity to win little sister's heart? Second lady, you've overestimated me. Chu Li smiled. If I'm that capable, why did I drag it until now? That's true. Xiao Shi smiled. You've suffered a lot. Little sister punished you badly. But now, the bitterness is over. You've won the beauty. Chu Li chuckled. Although they were married, they were not considered a real married couple. Xiao Qi was still thinking about the regal sword scripture, and did not want to lose her virginity. He had been busy achieving merits previously, and did not have any other thoughts. Now that he had returned to Gale City, he had some free time, and was ready to find a way to consummate the marriage, so that Xiao Qi would completely give up on him. Moreover, his nature restoration manifestation had improved, so he was more confident. Xiao Qi was a little shy and could not take her teasing. She quickly said, Second sister, let's talk about King An first. What kind of divine technique did he cultivate? Why is he so arrogant? Who knows? Xiao Shi pouted. He's probably affected by his martial arts. He's so headstrong now that he won't listen to anyone. My two sisters don't even dare to talk to him anymore. He loses his temper easily. Chu Li scoffed. Did he go to Tianshu courtyard? Both of them had made a bet. If Kingen lost, he would never be able to enter Tianshu courtyard. No, he didn't. Xiao Shi shook her head. My two sisters told me about it. However, he fought with Zhu Tianhua and the others. He said that they were arrogant and unruly. They're not a protector, so he wanted to chase them out of the imperial residence. Are they badly injured? Chu Li scoffed. Xiao Shi nodded. They're quite badly injured. I think he's trying to show off to you. Chu Li shook his head. He's trying to force you to leave Tianshu courtyard. Xiao Shi was stunned. She then came to a realization and sneered. That's a good plan. Xiao Qi did not know about the bet between Chu Li and Kingen. She looked at Chu Li in confusion. Chu Li explained. Xiao Qi frowned. Why does he want to force second sister to leave Tianshu courtyard? Chu Li tilted his head and chuckled. Xiao Shi glared at Chu Li and stared at Xiao Qi. What else can a man want to do? Don't you know what Chu Li wants to do with you? Xiao Qi suddenly realized and blushed. She forced herself to calm down. He has such dirty thoughts? Looks like I'll have to teach him another lesson. Chu Li scoffed. Xiao Shi shook her head. You have to be careful. He's not the same as before. His martial arts is amazing. I heard from Zhu Tianhua that he's even better than you. Oh. Chu Li frowned. He's that powerful? That's why you have to be careful. Don't rush into a fight. If you're defeated by him, your identity will be exposed. That'll be terrible. Xiao Shi said. Once his identity was exposed, the emperor would not let it go. There would be endless trouble. Chapter 38-36. Chu Li nodded slowly. Now that he had seen the heroes of the world, he naturally did not think that he was invincible. He was still far from that. King An's luck was extremely strong. Not only did he not break down after several setbacks, but he became braver with each setback. It was truly admirable. However, if he was not a royal highness and had the emperor's protection, he would have been killed countless times by him. He would not have been allowed to live until now. As an enlightened master, the emperor was too terrifying. He had seen his power with his own eyes. If he was hit by a palm, he would definitely die. Even if he had the life and death scripture, he would not be able to survive. No matter how powerful the life and death scripture was, his body could not be revived even if it was torn into pieces. He had always felt that it was not worth sacrificing his life for a guy like Kingen. Even if Kingen was evil, the damage he could do was limited. There was no need to die with him. He just had to find a way to deal with him. Deep down, he did not see Kingen as an opponent. He only saw him as someone who could be suppressed at any time. He had too many ways to deal with him according to his mood. However, it seemed that he had underestimated the heroes of the world. He had underestimated King and had actually cultivated a divine technique. He looked up at the starry night sky and sighed helplessly. If he did not become an enlightened master, his hands and feet would be tied. He could not even kill Kingen. He suddenly had a strong urge to kill Kingen. However, if he wanted to kill Kingen, he would have to face the emperor's pursuit. He was not confident that he could escape from an enlightened master. However, there was still a way. He thought of a way, which was to have Zhao Dai assassinate King and or Du Feng assassinate him. Then, he would escape to the Li dynasty. No matter how angry the emperor was, he would not dare to go to the Li dynasty to kill him. As long as he could escape to the Great Light Peak, the emperor would not be able to do anything. However, this was under the premise that he could not recognize his true identity. Otherwise, the High Duke's public house would be in trouble. Everyone around him would become the target of the emperor's anger. They would not have a good life, and their lives might even be in danger. He thought that if he became an enlightened master, his temperament would be different from ordinary people. He would be even more unscrupulous. Even if he only had a little suspicion, he could cause his friends to be doomed eternally. Even if he couldn't do it himself because he was bound by the law of heaven, with the emperor's dignity, he only needed to give an order and countless people would do it for him. No matter how strong the public house was, they were just one family. It was impossible for them to resist the emperor's power. Moreover, the emperor could send people to secretly attack them, causing the High Duke's public house to suffer in silence. He could even impersonate people from the martial arts world to seek revenge, and the High Duke's public house would not be able to find out that it was the emperor's doing. That was why he had to kill King An without anyone knowing. It was fine to anger the emperor, but he could not let the emperor know that he was the one who killed King An. This required him to cultivate the heavenly demon scripture to a high enough level. He had a feeling that as long as he cultivated the heavenly demon scripture to a high enough level, he would be able to do it. However, although the cultivation of the heavenly demonic power seemed easy, it was actually extremely difficult. He was cultivating the 4 scriptures in his mind at the same time. The heavenly demonic scripture had been improving, but it seemed to be so long that he could not see where the next step was. He had never thought about cultivating the heavenly demonic power. With the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, he was not so cautious about the heavenly demonic power. However, he did not deliberately cultivate it either. He just let it slowly improve, and when the conditions were right, success would come naturally. The incident with King An made him determined to quickly improve the heavenly demonic scripture. With his current state, even an enlightened master would be able to see through his disguise. "What are you thinking about?" Seo Shur asked. "Are you still thinking about taking care of him?" Chu Li smiled. "Are we just going to let him be so unscrupulous? Let's see how crazy he is." Seo Shur scoffed. "He's so stubborn and self-opinionated. He'll be finished sooner or later. Even if he's a royal highness, it's useless. No one can be unscrupulous in the fairies' capital." Chu Li nodded lightly. Seo Shur understood. Seo Chi said, "Second eldest sister, why don't you return to the High Duke's public house? You can come here to play at night." "Forget it." Seo Shur chuckled. "I don't want to be such an annoying person and be an eyesore." She saw the relationship between a man and a woman as nothing. She had no desire or she would not have chosen to marry King An. She had lived with death for so many years that she was indifferent to the relationship between a man and a woman. She had no qualms about talking about the relationship between a man and a woman. She did not have the usual reserved shyness of a woman. Seo Chi was annoyed. "Second elder sister," Seo Shur said, "both of you are in a sweet relationship. I'll be a hindrance here. Just stay in the public house." "All right," Chu Li said, "staying in the public house makes me feel more at ease. Actually, you don't have to worry. No matter what, he won't dare to do anything to me," Seo Shur said. Chu Li scoffed. "Don't underestimate King An's shamelessness. He's an unscrupulous person." "Do you really think he'll keep his promise and never step into Tianshu courtyard?" "He'll break his promise. Of course," Chu Li scoffed. "He's been putting on an act all this time just for the last step. That's why I have to leave early." "All right, I'll leave tomorrow." Seo Shur nodded. Chu Li sighed in relief. Seo Chi said, "Be careful when you leave. Don't let him know." "I'll stay here for 2 days and then return to the public house," Chu Li said. He was worried that if Seo Shur and the others were to leave, they would be assassinated by King An. "All right, I'll do as you say." Seo Shur smiled. It was late at night. Chu Li did not send her off. She and Seo Chi slept in the west room and talked about their recent situation. On the evening of the second day, the sun was setting. The afterglow illuminated the courtyard. Chu Li was cultivating in the courtyard when there was a knock on the door. Seo Chi and Seo Shur were talking in the pagoda. When they heard the knock, they looked over. Chu Li smiled and waved his hand. He went to open the door. Fa Yuan stood outside the door. He wore a gray robe and stood calmly. He pressed his palms together and bowed. Brother Chu. Fa Yuan, let's talk outside. Please. The two left the residence and went to the lake. They hopped onto a small boat. The small boat floated away from the shore and came to the middle of the river. It floated along with the slightly swaying water. Fa Yuan stood at the bow of the small boat. His gray robe fluttered. He had an otherworldly temperament. He pressed his palms together and bowed. Brother Chu, why did you summon me here? Chu Li stood at the other end of the boat. He sighed. King An has cultivated a new divine technique. What is it? Fa Yuan smiled. The Great Compassion Divine Technique. You're from the Tempest Temple? Chu Li scoffed. Fa Yuan nodded. His Highness King An's comprehension is extraordinary. He actually understood this divine technique and cultivated it in one go. He's a genius. Humph, what is the Tempest Temple trying to do? Chu Li said. Fa Yuan smiled and shook his head. Chu Li said, Are you trying to use him to get rid of me? Fa Yuan smiled. What are you thinking, Brother Chu? Chu Li said, The Tempest Temple just likes to stir up trouble. Sigh. Fa Yuan sighed. He did not understand the temple's methods, but as a disciple of the Tempest Temple, he could only obey. The small boat floated gently. After a while, it floated away from Chu Li's residence. After a while, Chu Li asked, Is the Great Compassion Divine Technique very powerful? Fa Yuan nodded. It's a martial art that is enlightened. Once it matches the state of mind, it will advance by leaps and bounds. However, there's only one drawback. It's very difficult to advance further. However, it has already reached a shocking cultivation level. Brother Chu, you and I are no match for His Highness King An. Chapter 38-37. P.S. Update complete. I'm really sorry for the lack of updates these few days. I'm working hard to adjust. Give me 2 days. Fa Yuan asked, Brother Chu wants to go against His Highness King An? Chu Li glared at him. I'm not going against him, he's going against me. Brother Chu, you're here. He can't do anything to you even if he wants to. Why not take a step back? Fa Yuan said with a smile. Take a step back? He's thinking of ways to deal with me. If I don't have the power to fight back, I'm afraid I won't live past the next month. There's no way out. The Tempest Temple is really amazing to be able to create such a master in such a short time. Fa Yuan shook his head. Very few people cultivate the Great Compassion Divine Technique, but because His Highness King An's state of mind is compatible with it, he's allowed to cultivate it. For him, cultivation in the future is not that important. The disciples of the Tempest Temple rarely cultivated the Great Compassion Divine Technique because it was too vague and it depended on luck. Who would know that their state of mind would be like this? There was no way to control it. The Great Compassion Divine Technique required a state of mind. If one state of mind was not there, even if one cultivated for 40 hours a day, it would be useless. Once the state of mind was there, there would be an earth-shattering advancement in a few days. This was no different from gambling. The disciples of the Tempest Temple were all proud and arrogant. They did not want to rely on luck to cultivate, so why would they cultivate this? Chu Li asked, Is there any weakness in the Great Compassion Divine Technique? Yes. The power of the Great Compassion Palm is shocking, but it needs to be charged in advance. Your body technique is extremely fast, you might be able to dodge it. Charged. Chu Li nodded slowly. Fa Yuan said, But to others this amount of time is almost negligible. After all, he has cultivated it to a very high level. Brother Chu, you have good eyesight, you should be able to sense it. Knowing this will put you in an invincible position. He smiled as he said this. This was a top secret. Chu Li smiled. Thank you very much. Fa Yuan said, Brother Chu, you're really a genius to be able to live so freely in adjacent town. I'll adapt to the situation. Chu Li shook his head. Oh right, the Tempest Temple hid the Azura power technique and the Heavenly Demon scripture, right? Fa Yuan frowned and said, why did Brother Chu mention this scripture? The Heavenly Demon scripture and Buddhist scripture were natural enemies. The biggest enemy of Buddhist cultivators was not Azura, but the Heavenly Demon. The Heavenly Demon could change at will, and it was impossible to guard against it. If one did not guard against it, it would have already drilled into one's heart, and it was best at destroying one's state of mind and enlightenment. Chu Li said, I've heard of this scripture by chance and found it interesting. Does the Tempest Temple not cultivate it? How is that possible? Fa Yuan shook his head. The Heavenly Demon scripture and Buddhist scripture are natural enemies. Buddhism is meant to restrain the Heavenly Demon. Chu Li sighed. Unfortunately, the Ji dynasty doesn't have the Heavenly Demon scripture, does it? Of course. Fa Yuan said. Chu Li asked, does the Fu dynasty have it? Yes. Fa Yuan slowly said, it seems that Brother Chu is quite familiar with the general situation of the world. The Ji dynasty was located in a remote area, so it was extremely difficult for them to obtain news from the Fu dynasty. Chu Li smiled. Of course, I'm not as knowledgeable as you. Fa Yuan saw that Chu Li had some understanding, so he did not hide it anymore. He sighed. The Fu dynasty is the center, and it's much more prosperous than the Ji dynasty. Moreover, Taoism is flourishing in the Fu dynasty, and Buddhism is not flourishing. On the other hand, the Buddhist scripture of the Ji dynasty and the Li dynasty are considered prosperous. The Holy Church of Light in the Li dynasty is also considered Buddhism, right? It can only be considered as a branch of Buddhism or a branch of layman. Fa Yuan shook his head. The Buddhist scripture of the Fu dynasty is weak, and Taoism is strong. The Heavenly Demon scripture can't be passed down in the Ji dynasty or the Li dynasty, but it's still being passed down in the Fu dynasty. It's worrying. The Heavenly Demon scripture can't be passed down. Is the Fu dynasty so open-minded? The Fu dynasty is inclusive, all-inclusive, and blends the world. Fa Yuan sighed. It's precisely because of this shocking spirit that they can have such a prosperous era. It's praiseworthy. Are there any drawbacks in cultivating the Heavenly Demon scripture? Chu Li asked. Fa Yuan frowned. The Heavenly Demon scripture will change the personality and mindset of the person who cultivates it. They will unconsciously become selfish, and the power of their instincts will become stronger. They will burn themselves to destroy the world. It's terrifying. Chu Li asked, the Heavenly Demon scripture has such power. Those who study Buddhism need to restrain their inner demons, and inner demons are also a type of Heavenly Demon. Fa Yuan shook his head and sighed. Brother Chu, if you come into contact with the Heavenly Demon scripture, you must not cultivate it. Otherwise, you'll harm yourself and others. He had a vague feeling that Chu Li's sudden interest in the Heavenly Demon scripture might be related to the Heavenly Demon scripture. Once he was related, he might cultivate the Heavenly Demon scripture. If it was an ordinary person cultivating the Heavenly Demon scripture, it would not be a big deal. The Heavenly Demon scripture was profound and unpredictable. It was not inferior to the top-notch divine techniques of Buddhism, and it might even be harder to cultivate. However, Chu Li was extremely talented. Once he obtained the Heavenly Demon scripture, he might be able to cultivate it to a certain level. Then, he would be a huge threat to Buddhism. Chu Li nodded. Now that you mention it, I'm interested. The Heavenly Demon scripture must be very powerful for the Tempest Temple to be so afraid. The power of the Heavenly Demon scripture is indeed extraordinary. The Heavenly Demon scripture and Buddhist scripture are like one yin and one yang. Their powers are similar, and the Heavenly Demon scripture is even more powerful. However, no matter how powerful a martial art is, if you lose your mind, would you still dare to cultivate it? Chu Li shook his head. Fa Yuan said, "That's why I advise Brother Chu to stay away from the heavenly demon scripture." Chu Li smiled. "Don't worry, I heard about it by accident. I'm interested, so I asked you about it." "That's good." Fa Yuan pressed his palms together and looked at him deeply. "King An's behavior is not like that of a Buddhist." Chu Li scoffed. Fa Yuan said, "Does a Buddhist not have a murderous nature? No temper? Then he'll become a Buddha. What's the point of cultivating after becoming a Buddha?" Chu Li nodded. "Alright, the Great Compassion Divine Technique. I'd like to have a good fight with King An and experience the power of the Great Compassion Divine Technique. His Highness King An's cultivation level is very high now. Brother Chu, you're no match for him." Fa Yuan shook his head and sighed. "I'm no match for him either, so it's better to be cautious." Chu Li scoffed and said no more. He was thinking about the scripture of the heavenly demon and decided to go to the Fu dynasty to take a look at the inheritance of the scripture of the heavenly demon and see if there was any way to improve it. If he did not cultivate the scripture of the heavenly demon to a certain level, he would not be able to kill King An. As for the fact that his cultivation level was not as high as King An's, he did not care. After all, King An was just a flower in a greenhouse. Although he was tenacious and became braver the more he was defeated, he lacked the experience of fighting. Even if his cultivation level was higher than Chu Li's, he might not be able to escape once he fought. Chu Li's light blade was so powerful that it could kill masters who were far more powerful than him, including King An. The light blade was an antique study that he could use on both sides. It could be used as the Eternity Blade, and others would not be able to tell the difference. The key now was how to kill King An and escape unscathed. Even if he could not escape unscathed, he could not implicate the High Duke's public house and Shao Qi. This depended on the scripture of the heavenly demon. When the scripture of the heavenly demon was cultivated to a certain level, he could completely hide his identity from the emperor. He did not know when he had this feeling that the scripture of the heavenly demon could hide from the emperor, but he believed in this feeling. Therefore, he was determined to cultivate the scripture of the heavenly demon and find a way to improve it. Fa Yuan said, "Brother Chu, I have to tell you that once you cultivate the scripture of the heavenly demon, you'll be the enemy of the Tempest Temple." Fa Yuan, do you think I'm cultivating the scripture of the heavenly demon now? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Fa Yuan frowned and carefully sensed it, then shook his head. Chu Li said, "That's it." He was now certain that the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture could suppress the scripture of the heavenly demon, and it could also suppress the aura of the scripture of the heavenly demon to fool others. Chapter 38:38. Fa Yuan stared at Chu Li. One of them was at the bow and the other was at the stern. They were very close to each other, and Fa Yuan's senses were especially sharp. He felt that Chu Li must have something to do with the heavenly demon scripture. He might have even cultivated the heavenly demon scripture, but he did not have the aura of the heavenly demon scripture on him. Anyone who cultivates the scripture of the heavenly demon will become the public enemy of Buddhism, Fa Yuan said in a low voice. "Brother Chu, please don't make a mistake." Fa Yuan, how many times have you repeated it? Chu Li could not help but laugh. Since it's the public enemy of Buddhism, why hasn't the heavenly demon scripture been lost? The Fu dynasty's Buddhism isn't flourishing, that's why they're still around. If they were in the Ji dynasty, they would have been destroyed long ago. Fa Yuan shook his head. Moreover, the cultivation of the scripture of the heavenly demon is extremely difficult. There are very few cultivators, so the scripture of the heavenly demon will not flourish. It is destined to decline and eventually be lost. The scripture of the heavenly demon has these drawbacks, but there are still people who cultivate it. There must be something special about it, right? Chu Li asked. Fa Yuan said slowly, after mastering the heavenly demonic power, One can transform into a myriad of forms and transform into another person. It's impossible to guard against it, but the cultivation of the heavenly demonic scripture requires a root vessel. Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. Fa Yuan glanced at Chu Li and felt that Chu Li might have cultivated the heavenly demon scripture. If it was someone else, they might not be able to cultivate the scripture of the heavenly demon even if they obtained it. They needed to have a deep foundation in Buddhism to understand what the scripture of the heavenly demon talked about. Without a deep understanding of Buddhism, reading the scripture of the heavenly demon was no different from reading the scripture of the heavenly demon. Even those who were well versed in Buddhism might not be able to comprehend the heavenly demon scripture. Only the smartest people could comprehend it. Chu Li fulfilled all these conditions. He had a deep understanding of Buddhism and an amazing comprehension. If there were only 10 people in the world who could successfully cultivate the heavenly demon scripture, he might be one of them. Chu Li smiled. Then how does the Tempest Temple restrain the heavenly demon scripture? There are many secret Buddhist techniques that can counter the heavenly demon scripture, but the most fundamental one is the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture. Fa Yuan said slowly, once you master the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, you will no longer be deceived by the heavenly demon. You will be able to see through all lies and deceit and see the true face. No matter how much you change, you will not be able to hide. I see. Chu Li nodded and smiled. If I've cultivated both the heavenly demon scripture and Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, would you still be able to tell? That's impossible. Fa Yuan shook his head. Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture and the heavenly demon scripture are incompatible. It's impossible to cultivate them together. I see. Chu Li sighed. The heavenly demon scripture is truly extraordinary. Don't worry, I've cultivated the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture. Fa Yuan pressed his palms together and let out a long sigh. Chu Li continued to ask, by the way, have you found out about the secret of the enlightened master in the imperial mausoleum? Chu Li felt that the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture and the heavenly demon scripture could be cultivated at the same time because of the existence of the Great Light scripture. Fa Yuan pondered for a moment and said slowly, actually, it's nothing much. The inner city of the imperial mausoleum hides the enlightened master's remains. Through the remains, I discovered the secrets of the enlightened master. That's all. When heavenly deities ascend to the heavens, they don't transform into rainbows. Why would they leave behind any remains? He had always been dubious about the secret of the Empyrean in the imperial mausoleum. He felt that someone had deliberately spread the rumor and that it might not be true. The heavenly god ascension method is not the same. Some will turn into a rainbow and leave behind a heavenly god pellet, while others will leave behind an unbreakable golden body. An unbreakable golden body! Unbreakable, everlasting, lifelike, just like a living person, just without any aura, Fa Yuan said. Chu Li frowned. Is there anything indestructible in this world? Fa Yuan said, an unbreakable golden body can stay in this world for 1,000 years. What's the use of leaving these golden bodies? Chu Li scoffed. An unbreakable golden body is the link between the outland and this world. Without these golden bodies, the Lung family can't connect with the outland, and they can't produce enlightened masters. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and slowly nodded. I see. He finally understood the mystery behind it. These golden bodies were like coordinates, and they were also the passage between the outland and this world. The descendants of the Ling family needed to connect with the outland through these golden bodies and become enlightened masters. No wonder all the enlightened masters of the imperial family came out from the imperial mausoleum. Brother Chu, do you understand? Fa Yuan looked at Chu Li sighed. The imperial mausoleum is the foundation to become enlightened masters. It's not wrong to say that it contains the secrets of the enlightened masters. If you're not from the Ling family, even if you get these golden bodies, it's useless. Fa Yuan shook his head. If these golden bodies are taken away, won't the Ling family lose the possibility of becoming enlightened masters? Chu Li asked. Fa Yuan said lightly, "Don't forget that the emperor is an enlightened master. Who can take him away?" Chu Li smiled bitterly and nodded. Even if they could take the other golden bodies, there was still the emperor. As long as the emperor was around, once he ascended to heaven, the golden body would become a passage, and the descendants of the Ling family could use it to become enlightened masters. Then wouldn't it be a joke to study these golden bodies to become enlightened masters? Chu Li scoffed. Those Imperial Mausoleum internal guards were tricked into entering, right? How can they study the golden bodies? The golden bodies would definitely not allow outsiders to touch them, so how would they have the opportunity to study them? Fa Yuan said, "Although these golden bodies are dead, they are no different from when they were alive. The aura of an enlightened master is still there. Feeling this aura, one can touch the secrets of enlightened masters, and understand the method to become enlightened masters. If it's so magical, how can the four major sects sit still?" Chu Li scoffed. Fa Yuan slowly shook his head. The four major sects all have heaven and God pills or indestructible golden bodies. There's no need to study the Ling family. Chu Li frowned. Fa Yuan said, "Brother Chu, you want to become an enlightened master too, right?" "Who doesn't?" Chu Li said. Fa Yuan smiled and shook his head. "Brother Chu, it's impossible for you to become an enlightened master. You should just give up." Chu Li scoffed. "Why can't I become an enlightened master? Only the four major sects and the imperial family can become an enlightened master. It's impossible for the other sects, not even the High Duke's public house," Fa Yuan said slowly. "Brother Chu, even if you can become the world's #1, you can't become an enlightened master if you're not a disciple of the four major sections. Maybe I'll suddenly have an epiphany and become a disciple of the Titanium Temple." Chu Li smiled. The fact that he became a disciple of the Amethyst Mountain had always been a secret. Only a few people knew about it. Fa Yuan smiled. "Brother Chu, you'll have to defeat me first." "Let's wait and see." Chu Li scoffed. "As for King Yin, you guys should also take care of him. Don't go overboard." "Brother Chu, you're making things difficult for me." Fa Yuan sighed. "His Highness King Yin doesn't listen to us. He and the temple are just using each other. The temple wants to ease the relationship with the imperial family, while he wants to recover his martial arts." Chu Li glared at him. Fa Yuan put his palms together apologetically. The two of them stood on the small boat. The boat floated and circled around adjacent town. When it returned to Chu Li's residence, Fa Yuan bid farewell and left. The sun was setting and the western sky was filled with red clouds. Chu Li looked at the towering city wall in front of him and was filled with emotions. The Fu dynasty's city wall was much taller than the Ji dynasty and the Li dynasty. The city wall in front of him was twice the height of the Ji dynasty's city wall. It was about 30 meters tall and was 10 stories high. Standing under the city wall, people could not help but feel small. Using the omniscient mirror to observe 10 miles, he could see the bustle and liveliness of the city. This was only a remote town in the extreme west of the Fu dynasty, but it was already comparable to the bustle and liveliness of Chongming town. The city tower was majestic and imposing. The wide city gate did not have a gate guard at all. People could enter and leave as they pleased. There was an endless stream of carriages and people coming and going. Chu Li's white robe fluttered in the wind and a long blade hung on his waist. He walked slowly and calmly in the crowd like a crane among chickens, very eye-catching. Chapter 38-39. He slowly walked into the bustling town and arrived at the tallest restaurant in the town. Then, he sat on the second floor. The first floor was too crowded and the third floor was rather deserted. The second floor was the most suitable. There were not many people, only 5 tables. They were far apart from each other. It was quiet but lively at the same time. It was obvious that this restaurant was good at reading the minds of its customers. Julie ordered a table full of dishes and felt the difference between the Fu dynasty and the Li dynasty. He used the omniscient mirror to observe the people on the second floor. The other 4 tables were occupied. Only one table had a person drinking alone like him. He was tall and slender, handsome and indifferent, as if he did not care about anything around him. He wore a dark blue robe and had a long sword at his waist. Julie could tell that the ancient sword was not an ordinary verdant-tipped sword. It was a treasure sword. Looking at his slender and fair hands, he was obviously a swordsmanship expert. Unfortunately, he knew little about the Fu dynasty. He could only explore slowly and could not tell which sect he was from. Julie realized that he was also secretly paying attention to him. After all, his attire and calm temperament could not be hidden from those with discerning eyes. They could tell that his cultivation level was not ordinary, but unfortunately, they could not see through him. With Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, it was difficult for outsiders to see through him. They only felt that he was powerful but did not know how powerful he was. Ah, Officer Zheng is so unlucky. He can't help it. It's his fault for offending the Church of the Divine Blood. What a femme fatale! Miss Zheng is beautiful, and everyone thought that she would marry a capable Mr. Right, and Squire Zheng would also rise to the heavens with her. Who would have thought that he would get into trouble? In my opinion, Officer Zheng is really stubborn. How can a small arm win against a big leg? If he wants to marry his daughter, he should just marry her. He even found himself a big backer. Why did he have to reject him? That Hu Qiming doesn't have good intentions. He only covets Lady Zheng's beauty. Marrying him is like jumping into a pit of fire. It won't end well. Jumping into a pit of fire is better than dying, right? Officer Zheng has a strong temper. He would rather break than bend. I admire his spirit, but unfortunately, I can't help him. I heard that Officer Zheng asked a few friends for help, but none of them agreed. It's so sad. If it was someone else, Officer Zheng's friend might have stood up for them. However, no one would dare to help the Church of the Divine Blood. Sigh, who would dare to provoke the Church of the Divine Blood? Officer Zheng is really unlucky to get involved. Who would have thought that Hu Qiming has an uncle from the Church of the Divine Blood? God is really blind. Officer Zheng is such a good man. What's the use of being a good person? These days, the more you do good deeds, the faster you die. At least you can live longer by being a bad person. That's right. Bang! The young man, who was drinking alone, slammed the table. The surrounding people turned their heads to look. The sword-bearing youth looked coldly at the table where the previous discussion had taken place. Seniors, may I know who Squire Zheng is? Squire Zheng's name is Zheng Shoufeng. An old man stroked his beard and sighed. Little brother, are you feeling indignant? Good people shouldn't be bullied like this, the young man said in a low voice. The old man shook his head and sighed. We feel angry too, but Officer Zheng has offended the Church of the Divine Blood, one of the 8 major factions. The Church of the Divine Blood never shows mercy to their enemies. Whoever dares to help Officer Zheng will not only die, but they will also implicate their families. Therefore, we can only suppress our anger and don't dare to help Officer Zheng. If there's something wrong, someone will do it. If you won't help, I will, the young man said coldly. I'd like to see how arrogant the Church of the Divine Blood can be. Little brother, are you not afraid of the Church of the Divine Blood? The old man stroked his beard and frowned. You still need to think carefully. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers, but be careful not to implicate your family. Even if you don't have family, you will still implicate your life. I'm just afraid that they don't have the ability to take my life. The young man sneered. The old man smiled. My apologies, my apologies. Is your martial arts very high, young hero? Where does Officer Jing live? The young man scoffed. The old man said, at Springwell Square. You'll know once you ask around. Chu Li coughed softly and closed fist saluted. I haven't asked the seniors, can I use martial arts in the town? Of course. The old man laughed. As long as you have the ability not to be arrested, you can use martial arts anywhere. Another reader sneered. Humph, when the constables hear that someone is going to fight, they can't wait to crawl into a mouse hole and hide. Do you expect them to scare the martial arts masters? Not to mention the Church of the Divine Blood. When the Church of the Divine Blood is mentioned, these constables can't wait to cover their ears and pretend that they didn't hear anything. They all have families and don't dare to go against the Church of the Divine Blood. Chu Li frowned. Would the Church of the Divine Blood dare to attack the constables? Wouldn't that be going against the imperial court? Of course, they won't do it openly. The old man who spoke earlier shook his head. But they can't use underhanded means to do it flawlessly. Or they can find a few martial arts masters to do it. It looks like it's not a vendetta but a manslaughter. They won't be able to pinpoint the Church of the Divine Blood's weakness. The Church of the Divine Blood is so arrogant. Chu Li frowned. Don't the other 7 sects care? The Church of the Divine Blood runs rampant. Other than the Stargazing Pavilion and Goddess Attraction Mountain, no one can control the Church of the Divine Blood. These 2 sects rarely send their disciples out. What about the Great One Palace, the Ultimate Temple, and the Sword Moon sect? Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own doors. Who cares about others? Chu Li shook his head. I'm a disciple of the Ultimate Temple. The young man with the sword said. The Ultimate Temple will not allow the Church of the Divine Blood to be so lawless. The Ultimate Temple. Everyone was overjoyed. Young hero, are you really a disciple of the Ultimate Temple? An old man quickly asked. The disciples of the Ultimate Temple rarely come here. I'm Jing Zhe from the Ultimate Temple. I won't let Officer Jing get hurt. The young man with the sword scoffed. I'd like to see how arrogant the Church of the Divine Blood can be. Great, with the help of a master from the Ultimate Temple, Officer Jing can finally be saved. Everyone praised and was overjoyed. Young hero Jing, let's toast to you. Everyone stood up and toasted him. The Ultimate Temple was one of the 8 major sects along with the Church of the Divine Blood. Others were afraid of the Church of the Divine Blood's revenge, but the Ultimate Temple was not. Everyone wanted to enter the 8 major sects, but only a few of them could actually enter. Jingzhe waved his hand. Now is not the time to drink. I have to go see Officer Jing first. Yes, business is more important. Everyone quickly nodded. It would be a sin if Jingzhe couldn't make it to Squire Jing's place because of drinking. Jingzhe fist saluted, turned around, and strode down the restaurant. Chu Li threw an ingot of silver on the table, and followed him down the restaurant. Jingzhe ignored him, and walked straight to a street. Chu Li followed behind him. Jingzhe stopped in front of a large residence, and turned to look at Chu Li. His eyes were cold. Who are you? Why are you following me? Chu Li fist saluted. I'm Du Feng. I want to help Officer Jing as well. Du Feng? Which faction are you from? Jingzhe frowned and thought for a while. I don't belong to any faction. I'm just a person from the mountains. Chu Li shook his head. But I can't let a good person end up like this. Alright, don't do anything later. Don't get yourself into trouble. Jingzhe scoffed. Chapter 3840. P.S. Update complete. The 2 of them came to the front of the mansion and saw that there were 2 bright red palm prints on the stone lion by the door. Under the setting sun, it emitted a bloody light as if it was really dyed in blood. This is... Chu Li frowned. Is this from the Church of the Divine Blood? There are a total of 2 palm prints. It means that he wants to kill everyone in the house, Jingzhe said coldly. If there is only 1 palm print, then he will only kill 1 person. I thought the 2 palm prints were meant to kill 2 people. 2 palm prints means to kill everyone, and 3 palm prints means not leaving a single chicken or dog alive, including chickens and dogs. They won't even let the dogs off? Yes, Jingzhe said faintly. Anything with flesh and blood is a tonic for them. It can strengthen their bloody garment divine technique. Chu Li smiled faintly. Is there such a marvelous martial art? He had come into contact with the bloody garment divine power of the Church of the Bloody Garment. It was indeed unique, but he was most afraid of the martial arts of the Tian Luo sect. The bloody garment divine power of the Church of the Divine Blood should be the same. It was indeed impossible to defend against. You'll know when you meet one in the future, Jingzhe said faintly. The bloody garment divine power is extremely domineering. It devours flesh and blood, so when you fight with them, don't touch their palms. It's best to use a sword. Chu Li nodded. I use a knife. All right, Jingzhe said. I'll give you a piece of advice. If they're not from the 8 great sects, it's best not to fight them. Chu Li replied, I'm from the Ji dynasty. I'm not afraid of the Church of the Divine Blood's revenge. You're from the Ji dynasty? Jingzhe looked at him in surprise. Chu Li asked, could it be that young hero Jing has been to the Ji dynasty? Jingzhe shook his head and said, I've heard of it. Although it's a little remote, it's close to the Grand Myriad Mountains. Chu Li smiled and said, 100,000 hills, that's right, there are 100,000 hills. I've always wanted to experience 100,000 hills. I'll go to the Ji dynasty sooner or later, Jingzhe said. There's no way out of the 100,000 mountains. Young hero Jing, are you not afraid of death? Even if I die, I have to go in and take a look. Otherwise, I will have lived my life in vain. Jingzhe said lightly. Moreover, if I want to become an enlightened master, I can only hope in the 100,000 mountains. Chu Li nodded. As the 2 of them were talking, the door suddenly opened, and an old man with white eyebrows and a beautiful young woman came out. They were all dressed in tight clothes and held swords in their hands, ready to fight. When they saw Chu Li and Jingzhe, they were stunned. The young lady frowned. Are you disciples of the Divine Blood Church? Jingzhe said, I'm Jingzhe, a disciple of the Everlasting Temple. Are you Officer Jing? That's me. Jing Shofang clasped his fists and smiled. Young masters, please leave quickly. The disciples of the Church of the Divine Blood will be here soon. If they see you, it will be my sin if you die. Don't worry, Officer Jing. We're here to deal with the disciples of the Church of the Divine Blood. Jingzhe said in a deep voice, as long as I'm here, I won't let the disciples of the Church of the Divine Blood run wild. Sigh, Jing Shofang said helplessly, I appreciate young hero Jing's kindness, but the disciples of the Church of the Divine Blood who have come this time are experts. Young hero Jing, you should leave quickly before it's too late. Chu Li stood at the side and did not say anything. He looked at the young girl curiously. She was Jing Shofang's daughter at such a young age. It seemed that he was getting stronger as he aged. Jingzhe said, Officer Jing, don't you believe me? Sigh. Jing Shofang smiled bitterly. The disciple of the Church of the Divine Blood is called Zhu Xing. He's one of the few experts in the Church of the Divine Blood. Young hero Jing, it's better for you to leave first. I'm very grateful for your kindness. Zhu Xing. Jingzhe frowned and thought about it. He scoffed. He's a master, but it doesn't matter. I can still deal with him. Young hero Jing, you're not lying to me, are you? Jing Shofang was surprised. The young girl looked happy. Of course, she did not want to die, but she did not want to fall into Hu Qiming's hands. That would be worse than death. However, she wanted to exchange her life for her father's. Unfortunately, her father would not agree no matter what. They could only die together. If they could kill Hu Qiming before they died, she would be satisfied. Jing Zhe scoffed. Although Zhu Xing is powerful, I'm not someone to be trifled with. Officer Zheng and Miss Jing, don't worry. Thank you, young hero Jing. Zheng Shofang said. How should I cooperate? No need. Jing Zhe shook his head. Hee, how arrogant. A cold laugh was heard. Two people walked from the corner of the street. The one in front was a middle-aged man in black clothes. Behind him was a slender young man. His eyes were twinkling as if he did not like to look at people directly. He was staring at Miss Jing with his bright eyes. The middle-aged man in black clothes had a square face. He was neither tall nor short. His facial features were regular and he looked righteous. His eyes were bright and he looked at Jing Zhe with a cold smile. Where did you come from? How dare you speak so arrogantly? Jing Zhe fist saluted and said in a deep voice, Jing Zhe from the Ultimate Temple. Oh, it's the young man from the Ultimate Temple. The middle-aged man in black clothes said coldly. He did not seem to care. He looked at Officer Jing. Have you thought about it, Jing Shofang? My daughter will never marry Hu Qiming. Jing Shofang said coldly, Zhu Xing, even if you're a disciple of the Church of the Divine Blood, I won't give in. Then we'll have to follow the rules, Zhu Xing said calmly. I'll send your family to hell. How arrogant. Jing Zhe laughed coldly. As long as I'm here, I won't allow the Church of the Divine Blood's disciples to do as they please. Ha ha. Zhu Xing laughed and shook his head. What a hothead. You're Jing Zhe, right? That's me. Jing Zhe scoffed. Zhu Xing shook his head. You think I won't dare to kill you, don't you? Jing Zhe said, You can try. Bullying the weak is the tradition of the Church of the Divine Blood, isn't it? It's none of your business. Zhu Xing said coldly, If you make me angry, I'll kill you even if you're a disciple of the Ultimate Temple. Do you have the ability to do that? Jing Zhe laughed coldly. Others might be afraid of the Church of the Divine Blood, but we're not. Arrogant young man. Zhu Xing shook his head and dashed in front of Jing Shofang. His right palm was as red as blood and it was extremely fast. Swoosh. Jing Zhe stabbed his sword and it happened to stab Zhu Xing's palm. Ding. Zhu Xing's palm hit the blade of the sword and it made a clear sound. Jing Zhe's expression changed slightly. He did not expect Zhu Xing's bloody garment divine power to be so profound. The power that came from the sword seemed to be sucking away his essence. His body felt numb, as if he was afraid of meeting his natural enemy. Jing Zhe scoffed coldly. The sword's gleam suddenly increased and enveloped Zhu Xing. Zhu Xing said calmly, How dare you come out and embarrass yourself with such a profound sword technique? The Ultimate Temple is getting worse. He suddenly hit the sword shadows that filled the sky with his palm. Jing Zhe staggered and took a few steps back to avoid Zhu Xing's palm energy. He did not expect that he had underestimated Zhu Xing. Zhu Xing's bloody garment divine power was so profound. However, Zhu Xing was not happy at all. He shook his head disinterestedly, as expected of a newborn calf. Chapter 38-41. Chu Li took a step to the side and avoided the palm. Jing Zhe said coldly, You do have some skills. He shook his long sword, which let out a buzzing sound like a swarm of bees dancing in the air. As the long sword vibrated, his aura grew stronger as if he had changed from an innate master to a grandmaster. He disappeared in a flash and appeared behind Zhu Xing in the next moment. The tip of his sword had already pierced into Zhu Xing's back. Good boy! Zhu Xing quickly leaped forward to avoid being pierced by the sword. However, he was not as fast as Jing Zhe's sword. The tip of the sword had already reached his chest. Jing Zhe shook his long sword and continued to shoot at Zhu Xing. Zhu Xing quickly pointed at his chest and shouted, What a cunning boy! Eat my palm! His aura also changed. His palms, which were as red as blood, quickly faded. The blood color faded and became crystal clear, leaving only a trace of blood. It was like a piece of white jade with a faint layer of rouge, delicate and enchanting. Such a pair of hands on a man's body was indescribably strange. Blood jade palm. Jingzai scoffed. The blood jade palm was not something an ordinary disciple of the Church of the Divine Blood could cultivate. It was a secret technique of the Church of the Divine Blood. It was vicious and overbearing. Once the force of the blood jade palm touched one's body, it would devour one's essence and blood. Ding! Zhu Xing did not seem to be injured. The injury did not affect his movements at all. He slammed his palm down like a ghost, but it was blocked by Jingzai's long sword with a clear sound. Chu Li could see the wonders of his bloody garment divine power. The flesh on his wound wriggled, as if it was alive and closed up. It was almost as if he was not injured at all. He might need to recuperate later, but it did not affect his channeling now. Ding 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 ding. Zhu Xing was like Jingzai's shadow following closely behind him. One palm after another, there was no end to it. Chu Li shook his head. They were not easy to deal with. It seemed that the Fu dynasty had a trend of pretending to be weak. Jingzai was a grandmaster, but he pretended to be an innate master. Zhu Xing also hid some of his abilities. If he did not have the omniscient mirror, he might not be able to see through their cultivation level. However, was the Fu dynasty really that powerful? How could he meet a grandmaster in any small town? If that was the case, then it was truly terrifying. When Hu Qiming saw that Zhu Xing was suppressing Jingzai so much that he couldn't even breathe, he was completely relieved. He smiled at Miss Jing and said, "Lil Wan, if you follow me, you'll be able to eat well, wear well, and have endless money to spend. If there's anything you need, someone will do it for you. It's such a comfortable life. Why can't you get over it? Hu Qiming, you are a heartless bastard." Miss Jing sneered. "Stop dreaming, I will not marry you even if I die." Thinking of all the evil things Hu Qiming had done and seeing his face, she felt disgusted. "Sai, Xiaowan, it's not easy for you to die in front of me," Hu Qiming said with a smile. "It doesn't matter if you die, but what about your father? Did he die with you?" "Surnamed Hu, you will suffer retribution," Miss Jing said coldly. Hu Qiming burst into laughter. "What a joke. Lil Wan, do you also believe in Buddhism? If there really is retribution, then why am I still well and enjoying my life now? Don't be naive. In this world, good people suffer and bad people enjoy. So, follow me and be bad people. It's not that there won't be retribution, but it's not time yet," Miss Jing said coldly. "Today is the day of your retribution." After she said that, she and Jing Shofang attacked Hu Qiming at the same time. Both father and daughter were at the innate realm. Hu Qiming was good at talking, but his skills were not good. After a few moves, he was in danger. Miss Jing and Jing Shofang both smiled. If they were to die, then so be it. As long as they could kill Hu Qiming as well, then they would be satisfied. Ding! A clear sound lingered. Jingzai took 3 steps back, leaving 3 clear footprints on the bluestone. The blood jade palm suddenly became so strong that he was caught off guard. The palm force that was like a flash flood almost broke through his sword force. He could only retreat to reduce the force of the blood jade palm. His sword force was sharp and pure, but once it was broken through by the blood jade palm force and entered his internal organs, his inner energy would not be able to block the blood jade palm force. His inner energy was weak. Zhu Xing flashed and appeared behind Jing Shofang and Miss Jing. He stretched out both his palms and was about to hit their back. To him, killing the two was a piece of cake. He just thought that his nephew wanted this little beauty, so he did not kill them. Now it seemed that this was not the right time. This lady had the intention to kill. Leaving her alive would be a disaster, so it was better to get rid of her. TSS. A sharp sound came from behind him. He was alarmed. His life was in danger. He could not care less about the father and daughter, and quickly dodged to the side. Chu Li's blade flashed. Zhu Xing avoided it by a hair's breadth, and broke out in cold sweat. Chu Li had already sheathed his long blade. He stood behind the father and daughter with his hands behind his back, his white robe fluttering. His gaze was focused on Zhu Xing's chest. That was where the blood core was. He suddenly felt a strong desire. The heavenly demonic orb was restless. It wanted to rush forward and devour the blood core. It was like seeing spring water after being thirsty for 2 days. He suppressed the strong desire and pondered. He had seen the blood core from the Church of the Bloody Garment in Gale City and destroyed it with his own hands. However, he did not feel this strange. The heavenly demonic orb did not feel anything strange. Why did it have such a strong desire to devour the blood core now? Jingzhe looked at Chu Li. He did not expect Chu Li's blade technique to be so sharp. He then took a deep breath and became one with his sword. He shot towards Zhu Xing like a white rainbow. Zhu Xing's palms were like red jade as he faced the long sword. Ding 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 ding. It was like the sound of rain hitting on banana leaves. Jingzhe gritted his teeth and tried his best to drive the long sword faster and faster. He did not believe that Zhu Xing could block it. Hu Qiming was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. If he did not hold on, his uncle would not be able to save him. He gritted his teeth. Old dog Jing, I'll make you wish you were dead. Jing Shofang said coldly, Little bastard, let's see what you're capable of. I'll tie you up and play with your daughter in front of you, haha. Hu Qiming laughed. His body suddenly became excited as he imagined the scene. It was too exciting. He looked at Miss Jing with bright eyes. Haha, it'll be fun. Jing Shofang gritted his teeth. You're a bastard. I am a bastard. What can you do about it? Hu Qiming laughed. In a flash, Chu Li appeared behind him and swung his blade. Chi! Hu Qiming's head suddenly flew up. He was still laughing as blood spurted into the sky. Chu Li gently shook the treasure blade and returned it to its scabbard. Miss Jing was shocked. She had never seen such a cruel scene. She was so scared that her body was numb. Her chest was agitated, and she opened her mouth to vomit. Zheng Shofang was overjoyed and laughed. Haha, God has eyes. Ming Air! Zhu Xing shouted. In an instant, his eyes turned red and bloodshot. His hair moved without any wind and his clothes fluttered. It was as if he was in a strong wind. Then, he suddenly shrunk and his body became thinner. His eyes shot out a burning red light. Chu Li knew that he used a secret skill. The blood core in his body started to beat like a heart. Waves of strong energy surged out of his body. Bang! Jingzhe flew out as if he was hit by a galloping horse. His long sword flew into the air. Chapter 38-42. XNG coughed softly and said, Great Tile Wheel Temple defected to that person. Do you really believe that she can do that? It's always a hope. Rin Jian said, with her talent and peerless martial arts, if she can't do it, no one else in the world can. Moreover, her momentum has been set and no one can stop her. It's better to go with the flow. Go with the flow. Xing scoffed. Buddhism is all about advancing bravely and breaking through all falsehood. Rin Jian, you want to go with the flow. It's really funny. He felt that Great Tile Wheel Temple's behavior was shameless. He felt that retreating in fear was contrary to their Buddhism. It was difficult to have a good ending. However, he was very dissatisfied that he could achieve success and was about to ascend. Chu Li said, It seems that Abbot Rinjian has no confidence in Great Tile Wheel Temple and wants to protect it. He suddenly understood that after losing the Rainbow Light Scripture, Great Tile Wheel Temple's strength was seriously weakened. They were strong on the outside but weak on the inside. They defected to Miss Zhou to protect themselves. Otherwise, the temple might really be destroyed. Speaking of which, it was because of Great Mercy Temple. The resentment was really hard to explain. Renjian was silent for a while, then shook his head and sighed. Although I can ascend, my Buddhism is far from Master Dinru's. My comprehension is also not as good. After entering the upper heaven, you can still ascend, but I can't. Chu Li said, let me think about this. Thank you for your advice, Abbot Renjian. Amit Ba. Renjian pressed his palms together. I'll take my leave now. Please. Xing could not wait for him to leave so that he could not bewitch others. When Chu Li and Xing saw Renjian off, Xing turned his head and said, Dinru, don't listen to his nonsense. Chu Li smiled. Don't worry, Abbot. I will make arrangements here before ascending. As far as I know, ascending to the upper heaven is the most difficult. It's as difficult as ascending to heaven. Xing scoffed. Without martial arts, you can ascend purely with your Buddhism cultivation. Just think about it. Chu Li nodded. He could imagine that it would be just like the Dharma-ending age on Earth, where there was no spiritual chi at all. It would be difficult to cultivate martial arts, and if martial arts were difficult to cultivate, it would be difficult to improve the Dharma. In the end, it would all be for naught. However, if he wanted to defeat Miss Zhou, this was the only way to defy the heavens. If he continued to be tyrannical in this world, he would never be able to defeat Miss Zhou, because she cultivated in a higher level of martial arts. He had originally thought of using his two bodies to secretly unify the Devil's Doctrine and break Miss Zhou's foundation. Now that he thought about it, his plans were not as fast as the changes. All schemes were useless in the face of absolute martial arts. Even if he unified all the schools, it would be useless if his martial arts skill was not as good as Miss Zhou's. Xing looked at his expression and said helplessly, Are you really going to ascend? Chu Li said, Don't worry, Abbot. Frowning, Xing looked at him. He felt that his words were vague and seemed to have the intention of ascending. Chu Li appeared on top of a mountain and stood in front of a thatched cottage. A cool breeze blew, and the fresh flowers in front of the thatched cottage swayed gently, competing with each other in beauty. Chu Li stood outside the fence and could smell the fragrance of these fresh flowers. A moment later, a soft squeak was heard. The door of the thatched cottage opened and Zhou Mei walked out. She was dressed in a dark green gown and stared at him. Dingru, how dare you? Are you here to court death? Chu Li smiled. I want to find out something. What is it? Zhou Mei scoffed. Tell me, I won't tell you anyway. Chu Li said, Miss Zhou, how did you come from the higher level of the world? Zhou Mei was stunned, then glared at him, turned around, and slammed the door of the thatched cottage. Chu Li smiled. He had already seen the answer in Zhou Mei's mind. She had borrowed a treasure. She had never seen this treasure before, but she knew of its existence. Miss Zhou had used this treasure to travel freely between the three realms. Chu Li's spirit was lifted. Miss Zhou was indeed someone from the higher level. As long as he ascended to the higher level of the world, he could find Miss Zhou and snatch her treasure. Then everything would be solved. Without the treasure, she could not come down and cause trouble. Squeak! The door of the thatched cottage opened again. Zhou Shuang came out and looked at Chu Li quietly. Master Dingru, what are you trying to do? Chu Li smiled. I want to see if I can find a way to deal with Miss Zhou. Ha ha! Zhou Mei giggled as she came out from behind Zhou Shuang and stood side by side with her. She pointed at Chu Li and giggled. Dingru, you really know how to tell jokes. It's so funny. Chu Li calmly looked at her as she laughed. Zhou Shuang said, Master Dingru, I advise you not to waste your effort. No matter how powerful you are, you're no match for Miss Zhou. This is fate. No matter how strong a person is, they have to accept their fate. Chapter 38-43. In the next moment, he had already appeared on a mountain peak 100 miles away. The mountain peak was lush and verdant, with plants and trees growing vigorously and exuding a strong vitality. It was no different from the first mountain peak, and the spiritual chi was still rich and unrestrained. In the next moment, he flashed and appeared on another towering mountain peak that was even more majestic. There were many mountains around him that pierced through the clouds. The peak could not be seen clearly as it was shrouded in mist. Chu took a deep breath and nodded slowly. His intuition was right. There was indeed 100,000 mountain here. The spirit beast in the depths of his mind had become active ever since he came up. It leaped down from the tree of life and death and gave him instructions. This little beast had been lying on the tree of life and death. Chu had put in a lot of effort to hide it. It seemed to understand and had been lying on the tree of life and death. It seemed to have disappeared. After arriving at this level, it could not help but leap out. Chu used its information to activate God's feet and arrived here in a flash. 100,000 mountain. This 100,000 mountain was almost the same as the 100,000 mountain in the lower realm. Similarly, there were spirit beasts everywhere and their cultivation was profound. Although most of them could not compare to him, he did not dare to be presumptuous as he vaguely felt a huge pressure. Clearly, there were spirit beasts in this 100,000 mountain that could suppress him. His evil nether dragon and spirit turtle were in deep slumber and might only wake up after 100 years. Therefore, he did not disturb them. Moreover, after leaving the outland, he rarely went to the 100,000 mountain and had no contact with the spirit tiger. Unexpectedly, there was 100,000 mountain here. It seemed that it was related to the 100,000 mountain in the lower realm. Could it be that they were originally from the same place? He circulated his inner energy and found that the spiritual energy here was much denser and purer than the 100,000 mountain in the lower realm. Therefore, it was definitely not from the same place. However, the two must be related, and it was very likely that he came here from the 100,000 mountain. It was just that he had not found the way. He wandered around the 100,000 mountain and finally shook his head. The spirit beasts were very alert and had sharp instincts. They could sense his strength and did not come to provoke him. It was boring for him to be alone, so he flashed and left. He then used God's feet and ran 10,000 miles in one breath. Finally, he saw a majestic pool city. After watching for a while, he didn't directly enter the city. He first appeared on an official road outside Pool City. He wore a gray monk's robe and walked slowly. After taking a few steps, he heard the sound of a carriage behind him. He turned his head and saw an old man driving the carriage. The carriage was piled high with firewood, and the old horse pulling the carriage was walking leisurely. Chu walked like a chariot. His steps were calm and slow. Every step he took was the same distance. He was full of authority. Hey! The old man's carriage arrived beside him. The old man stopped the carriage and turned to look at Chu. Great master, are we entering the city? Chu pressed his palms together and bowed. Amitba. Greetings, old sir. I was just about to enter the city. Then come up. The old man chuckled and said, Reverend is young, but your appearance is dignified. You must be an eminent monk. Quickly come up. Chu pressed his palms together and smiled. Thank you, sir. He didn't stand on ceremony and immediately boarded the carriage. The old man laughed and cracked his whip. He urged the horse to move forward. Which temple are you from, Reverend? I came from an old temple deep in the mountains. There was only my master and me in the temple. After my master passed away, I was ordered to go down the mountain to save the world, Chu said. I see. It's to accumulate merits. The old man suddenly realized and praised. Reverend, you can go to the Temple of Gratitude in the city or the Linging Temple outside the city. They are all flourishing temples blessed by eminent monks. Chu smiled. Old sir, are you a Buddhist too? Amitba. Of course, I believe in Buddhism. The old man nodded and praised. I was fated to listen to Master Su Ye's sermon from the Temple of Gratitude. I became a Buddhist right away. Chu Li nodded slowly. Master Su Yi is a true eminent monk. The old man praised. During the sermon, auspicious signs appeared in the sky and golden lotuses appeared on the ground. His magic is truly boundless. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and nodded slowly. The old man said, "If Reverend can receive guidance from Master Su Yi, you will definitely benefit a lot." Chu Li smiled. "Then I shall go and meet Master Su Yi. That's for sure." The old man nodded quickly. Chapter 38-44. The two of them passed through 3 moon gates and finally arrived at a secluded meditation courtyard. Xiao Sha put his palms together and bowed. "Shirshu, Master Dingru is here. Please come in." A calm and hoarse voice sounded. The young novice monk pushed open the door of the hall. Inside was a hall made of bamboo mat. There were 2 praying mats placed on both sides. On one of the praying mats sat a tall, thin, and lean old monk. The old monk's eyebrows were all white. His long eyebrows drooped past the corners of his eyes and appeared on his cheeks. His eyes were as bright as the morning stars, as if they could see through one's heart. Chu Li pressed his palms together. "I am Dingru. Greetings, great Master Su Yi." Master Su Yi held the prayer beads with both hands, stood up and bowed to return it to Chu Li. "Ba, I don't deserve it." As soon as he touched the prayer beads, he felt a holy aura that was as vast as the sea. It was endless and unpredictable, and he knew that he had met an eminent monk. Now that he saw Chu Li, he was even more certain that the depth of this young monk's dharma was far beyond his own. Those who were profound in the Buddhist dharma would have even sharper senses. They would be able to sense the depth of the other party's Buddhist dharma cultivation extremely clearly. If they surpassed the other party, they would be able to see through the other party's cultivation with a single glance. If they couldn't see through it, it would mean that they had surpassed themselves. Monk Dingru stood in front of him, and golden light flashed in his eyes. It was as if a golden Buddha statue was standing in front of him. Moreover, he could faintly see a halo of light behind him. This was the reincarnation of the Buddha and the reincarnation of the Bodhisattva. Chu Li smiled as he took the prayer beads and put them back on his wrist. He sat opposite Master Su Yi and smiled. "I have never left the mountain. I cultivate with my master deep in the mountains and know nothing about the outside world. If I have been rude, please forgive me, Master Su Yi." Master Su Yi shook his head and said slowly, "Master's dharma is profound. I admire you and am ashamed of my inferiority." Chu Li smiled. "Master Su Yi, you don't have to be so humble. Everyone in Cloud Tripod City knows about you. You have a profound understanding of Buddhism and are the best at preaching scriptures." "I am ashamed." Master Su Yi shook his head and smiled. "May I know which method lineage Master Dingru cultivates?" Chu Li replied, "I don't know either. Since Master doesn't want to tell me, I can only bury myself in cultivation. Master's cultivation is profound. Why don't you stay in our temple for a few days and preach the scriptures for the benefit of the masses?" Master Su Yi smiled and said, "It's also good for the disciples to be bathed in the light of Buddha, transcending the sea of bitterness and entering the other shore." Chu Li nodded slowly. "All right." He then said, "I wonder if Master Su Yi knows the method of ascension?" "Ascension?" Master Su Yi was startled and slowly nodded. "The method of ascension is nothing more than a perfect merit." Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. Every realm had its own rules and laws of heaven and earth. It seemed like the ascension rule of this realm was perfect, similar to the ascension rule of the next realm. However, the ascension rule of the next realm was more numerous, while this realm was narrower. Master Su Yi said, "Whether it is us Buddhists, Taoists, or Confucians, if we want to ascend, there are only these 4 words. We can only work on these 4 words. Unfortunately, the world is so big that it is almost impossible to achieve perfection. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Why is that? The merit required for ascension is too great. Even if we establish a sect and promote Buddhism, it is almost impossible to achieve perfection. We can only continue to accumulate merit in the next life. Master Su Yi shook his head and said, but the mystery in the womb is difficult to solve. Often, the merit of the previous life will disappear in the next life, or even be entangled with sin. There are only 1 or 2 people who can achieve perfection in merit and ascend in 1,000,000 years. Chu Li said, which 1 or 2? One is Master Amano, who came from the West and introduced Buddhism to the East. The other is Master Ling Yao, who helped the founder of the Great Yu dynasty to build a nation that did not decline for 1,000,000 years. They are both supreme merit. Master Su Yi shook his head and said, today, although there are wars, it is far from the achievements of the founder of the Great Yu dynasty. Even as a royal advisor, it is difficult to establish supreme merit. Chu Li said, these 2 masters ascended? Yes. Master Su Yi said, this is undoubtedly true. It is recorded in the official history. Chu Li nodded slowly. It seemed that in this world where martial arts could not be practiced, he could only win with merit. He did not have enough merit, or else he would not be able to condense the divine power of circular light and break all spells. But now, it seemed that if he wanted to ascend from this world, he needed too much merit. Moreover, he had spent too much merit in the Xuanti dojo. Chapter 38-45. Their hearts were at peace as if their brains were immersed in cold spring water. Their hearts were firmly supported by the earth, and there was an inexplicable joy deep in their hearts. It was a kind of peace and joy that they had never experienced before. Immersed in this state of mind, Chu Li's every word was clearly imprinted in their minds and understood in their hearts. Lights flashed in their hearts, deepening the peace and joy in their hearts. As he preached, Chu Li's body emitted a faint golden light. The parts of his body that were close to his skin were white, and the further it went, the more golden it became. His voice became gentle and sweet, and every word was like a pearl that went straight to their hearts. They all felt a sense of conversion and respect as if Buddha himself had arrived. The diamond scripture was not long. Even though Chu Li preached calmly and slowly like the wind, he still finished very quickly. To them, it felt like only a moment had passed. Chu Li pressed his palms together and closed his mouth. He used the scripture impartation technique, a technique that he had cultivated in the lower realm. Now that his spirit had become stronger, it was easier for him to use it. He dragged everyone into the illusion that he had created. In this illusion, they became geniuses with photographic memory and amazing comprehension. Everyone felt the lingering sound, and they were all immersed in it. They did not move, and there was a smile on their faces. It was quiet and peaceful, and they looked solemn as if they had become eminent monks. After a while, Monk Su Yi came back to his senses, pressed his palms together, and chanted, Amitabha Buddha. His voice was sonorous, and it shook everyone's hearts, waking them up. Monk Su Yi stared at Chu Li strangely. When he preached, he could also create a deluge of heavenly flowers and golden lotuses, but this was a kind of spiritual secret technique. It was a Buddhist secret technique that he had cultivated to a certain level, and his spirit was strong. It was also used for preaching, and it helped strengthen the people's confidence. However, his secret technique could not achieve this. When he entered the illusion, he woke up and wanted to break through it. However, no matter how awake he was, no matter how carefully he observed, he could not find any flaws, and he could not escape the illusion. After Chu Li finished preaching, he stopped the scripture impartation technique, and only then was he able to break free. He was shocked. He knew that Chu Li's dermic base cultivation was profound and unfathomable, but he did not expect that he could cultivate the secret technique to such a level. He knew that it was fake, but he still could not break through the illusion and regain his consciousness. If he harbored malicious intent, there was no need for him to make a move at all. He could just use this secret technique to kill them silently. Chu Li smiled and looked at the crowd without saying a word. Amit Ba! Amit Ba! Amit Ba! Everyone put their palms together and bowed. They all felt a sense of wonder. Recalling the Diamond Sutra they had heard before, every word and sentence surged in their hearts. Moreover, their comprehension of the Diamond Sutra was still there. Their entire state of mind seemed to have been cleansed once. All the negative thoughts and all the unpleasant things of the past were dispelled, and there was only a relaxed and joyful feeling in their hearts, as if they were babies that had been reborn and obtained a new life. They wanted nothing more than to raise their heads and sing a song at the top of their lungs. The excitement and agitation in their hearts could not be suppressed, so they chanted the name of Buddha and bowed to Chu Li. Chu Li pressed his palms together and smiled. Good men and women, there's no need to be so courteous. The wisdom of the Diamond Scripture is boundless. You can chew on its essence from time to time and naturally improve your state of mind. You can detach yourself from your worries and be free from freedom. He stood up, bowed, and left. Everyone watched him leave and saluted. They gathered together for a long time and did not want to leave, discussing spiritedly. What kind of eminent monk is this great Master Dingru? I've never seen such a profound preaching before. It's really enlightening. Such a young master, could he be the reincarnation of some bodhisattva or arhat? Listening to this volume of the Diamond Sutra is better than cultivating for nearly 100 years. He's really an enlightened monk. We have such a great opportunity. Someone stepped forward and asked Monk Suyi, Great Master, what kind of divine monk is this great Master Dingru? Monk Suyi said amiably, Since there is a path, there is no need to ask where it came from. This preaching is an opportunity for all of you, almsgivers. Do not neglect it, digest it well, and you will definitely improve a lot. Everyone nodded. Chu Li returned to the stone table in the temple and sat down, thinking about whether it was appropriate for him to show off like this. Chapter 38-46. These letters were his stepping stone, paving the way for him. Otherwise, as a foreign monk, not many people would listen if he preached rashly. Otherwise, even if he showed his divine powers everywhere he went, he would be scolded as a demonic monk. Buddhism emphasized compassion, but when it came to the battle of the lineage of Dharma, it was extremely tragic. It was a matter of life and death, and no mercy was allowed. This was related to merit and beliefs, which were more important than life. He only preached the Diamond Scripture to prevent such a situation. The Diamond Scripture was an important scripture of Buddhism, and almost all sects practiced it. When he preached this scripture, it would not touch on sensitive areas, and it would not involve the conflict between sections. In this era where martial arts were not used, it was not that there were no conflicts, especially within the Buddhist sects, where the battle of the lineage of Dharma was even harsher. Master Dingru must be tired preaching. Have a good rest. I will go back and write. Monk Suyi pressed his palms together and left the temple. Chu Li sent him off. After returning to the small courtyard, he began to study spiritual energy. The surrounding spiritual energy was lively, rich, and pure. Unfortunately, it could not be converted into inner energy, and he could only watch. However, the spiritual energy did nourish his body. He could feel it, and his body became lighter. In particular, his body was a soul lotus body, and after so many transformations of divine power, it was more sensitive and agile. It was as if he wanted to become one with the surrounding spiritual energy, dancing with it. His spirit was strong, and he was invincible in the world, but he still could not drive the spiritual energy. It was like fog hitting a stone. With a thought, he already knew his situation below. He had already returned to the demon-subduing hall with the two women, and then began to travel the world, killing a few bandits along the way to accumulate merit. He suddenly felt something and smiled. As he killed a few bandits, his merit increased again. More importantly, the merit accumulated in the next world could be transferred to this world, and his merit in this world also increased. The round light behind his head became brighter and fuller, and he was overjoyed. If he was said to be in despair before because he could not ascend, now he had a glimmer of hope. The merit accumulated in the two worlds, coupled with the fact that it was easier to obtain merit in the next world, greatly increased his hope. The next morning, he woke up early and read a book of Buddhist scriptures, trying to understand the differences between the Buddhist scriptures of the two worlds. The Buddhist scriptures of both worlds were the same. He even realized that the Buddhist scriptures of the few worlds had not changed. It was just that the people who read the scriptures had different thoughts. Everyone saw the same Buddhist scripture differently. The sound of footsteps came from outside. A young novice monk stood outside the courtyard and said in a low voice, "Master Dingru, Martial Uncle Su Yi invites you." Chu Li nodded. He stood up, put down the Buddhist scriptures, and went to a basilica beside the Mahavira Hall. The monks of the Temple of Gratitude were having their morning classes in the Hall of Great Strength. The sound of Sanskrit lingered in their ears, solemn and dignified, and fragrant. The great hall next to the Hall of Great Strength was the Sangharama Hall. Inside sat two old monks, one was Monk Su Yi, the other was an old monk who gave off an imposing aura without being angry. His eyes were bright, his thick eyebrows raised, and he exuded a baleful aura. When Chu Li entered the hall, Monk Su Yi stood up and pressed his palms together. "Great Master Dingru, this is Great Master Jishin from Lingyin Temple." Chu Li pressed his palms together. Monk Jishin stood up and said slowly, "I came because of your reputation." Chu Li smiled. "My meager reputation is not worth mentioning, but Great Master Jishin is well known." Monk Jishin's eyes were as sharp as lightning. He stared at him as if he wanted to see through everything about him. He said in a low voice, "Where did you come from, Great Master?" "Where I came from." Chu Li smiled. "Where are you going?" Monk Jishin asked. Chu Li smiled. "To the west." "Amit Bao." Monk Jishin said in a low voice, "It seems that Great Master doesn't have a master." Chu Li nodded. "My master has been cultivating deep in the mountains all his life. He felt that it was not the right way to cultivate after leaving the world. He suffered a lot, so he asked me to come to the secular world to train my heart." "Excellent, excellent." Monk Jishin nodded slowly. "Only by training one's heart in the secular world can one be truly like this. Your master is indeed insightful. Great Master has remarkable abilities, but I would like to learn a thing or two from you." Chu Li smiled and reached out to put his hand on Monk Jishin's shoulder. "I was just about to worship Lingyin Temple." As he said this, he put his other hand on Monk Su Yi. Chapter 38-47. Chu Li nodded. Buddhist cultivation focused on the path of liberation. It was to transcend life and death and cut off worries, not the cultivation of divine powers. For the poor, they would think that a poor couple had 100 things to worry about. With money, everything could be solved and they would be happy. They did not know that with money there would be no more worries. It was not because you had money that you would not have worries. Divine powers were like money. With divine powers, it did not mean that one could escape life and death and be free from worries. It was just that the people treated divine powers like money. They thought that with it they could solve all worries. They did not know that divine powers did not have the ability to solve worries. It only proved that the cultivation of the dermic base was successful. Divine powers were not the end. They were just the manifestation of the dermic base. All the monks knew this. However, the people were ignorant and doubted the dermic base. To make them believe in it, one could only use divine powers to show inconceivable results. This was also a convenient way to redeem people. Be careful of the demon's sect, Jishin reminded again. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Monk Jishin said, "Our Buddhist sect has produced many top-notch figures, and many of them have fallen in the hands of the demon sect. They would often challenge the Buddhist sect's geniuses to destroy their confidence, causing them to fall into the demon sect." Chu Li asked, "Does the demon sect harm people?" "Of course, evil methods harm people," Jishin scoffed. "If they cultivate hard, they will end up with nothing." Chu Li nodded slowly. He could tell that this so-called demon sect was different from the demon sect in the lower world. They did not harm people. It was just that the techniques they cultivated were different. Therefore, there might be other things that needed to be understood slowly. "Master Jishin, let's write a letter," Su Yi said. "I will have someone send it over tomorrow." Ji Kong scoffed. "Don't worry. I promised and I will not go back on my word." "That's good," Su Yi said. "You won't let us in?" "I still have to write." "You should go back," Ji Kong said. "You." Su Yi shook his head and smiled. "Then we can only go back. Goodbye." Chu Li pressed his palms together. He put his hand on Su Ye's shoulder and the two disappeared. In the next moment, the two were in Chu Li's Zen courtyard. Su Yi looked at Chu Li and praised, "You really are remarkable. But Master Dingru, it is best not to let others know about this divine power." Chu Li nodded. "Thank you for your guidance, Master." He immediately understood what monk Su Yi meant. He did not want others to guess. Divine feat was even more astonishing in this world without Qigong. It would arouse suspicion and make people feel insecure, afraid that it would suddenly appear in their homes. To be able to come and go as he pleased, what kind of terrifying ability was this? How could people not guess? "Then I won't disturb you." Su Yi smiled. He was impressed by Chu Li's intelligence. Even though he lived deep in the mountains and did not know much about the world, he was able to see through everything with just a hint. His intelligence was shocking. Chu Li's sermon only had 300 followers, but it had a huge impact. As the relationship between the believers became closer, the news spread even faster. In just 2 days the news had already spread. All the believers who listened to the sermon praised Chu Li, the new eminent monk, to the utmost, which aroused the curiosity of other believers. On the morning of the 3rd day, monk Su Yi came over and told him that for the past 3 days, the believers had been coming one after another, begging him to open the altar and preach again. They all wanted to listen to his wonderful technique and hoped that Chu Li would open the altar and preach again. Chu Li agreed without hesitation. On the morning of the 4th day, he opened the altar and preached again in the Hall of Great Strength. This time, it was not only the believers who came, but also the eminent monks of the Hidden Spirit Temple. Moreover, the number of believers kept increasing. The news of Chu Li, the eminent monk, had already spread throughout the entire Cloud Tripod City. Many people had just heard the news and rushed over. In the end, the front of the Hall of Great Strength could no longer accommodate so many people, so it could only be moved to the outside of the Temple of Gratitude. Chu Li sat on the steps of the Temple of Gratitude while the others sat in the open space in front of the door. On both sides were a few ancient trees, lush and full of life. Under the shade of the trees, more than 2,000 people sat together and looked at Chu Li quietly, ready to listen to his sermon. Chu Li's gaze slowly swept across the crowd, then he pressed his palms together and began to preach. He activated the sutra preaching technique and pulled everyone into a world that he had created. It was like a paradise. In this world, everyone became extremely intelligent, had photographic memory, and had amazing comprehension. Chapter 38-48. Chu Li pressed his palms together. Amit Ba. As soon as he finished speaking, the birds and beasts left. It was lively but not noisy. The crowd looked at Chu Li with even more fanatical admiration. They wanted nothing more than to prostrate themselves and become his disciples. Chu Li smiled and pressed his palms together at the crowd, then turned and glided away. His footsteps were light as if he was riding the wind, and he disappeared into the forest in the blink of an eye. The crowd wanted to ask him to stay but dared not, so they could only watch him leave. In the world of sutras, their comprehension was outstanding, their thinking was as fast as lightning, and their wisdom was like pearls. No matter what doubts they had, they could see through them. Their hearts were free and they felt reborn. It was a wonderful feeling that they had never experienced before. They never thought that everything in the world could be so lively and interesting. Sigh, it's really wonderful. I've never heard such a magical sutra preaching. He's really a virtuous monk. We're so lucky to have met such a master. Everyone discussed animatedly, and it was extremely bustling. The silence of the entire mountain was replaced by clamorous noise. All the believers couldn't help but be excited as they discussed animatedly and praised endlessly. They wished for nothing more than to express the admiration and gratitude in their hearts, yet they just happened to be unable to completely express it. They felt that the peak seemed to exude a gentle aura, and it was exceptionally peaceful standing here. We have to beg Master Dinru to preach a few more times. Yes, yes. Every time I listen to Master Dinru's preaching, I'll have a huge gain. I've listened to it 3 times in a row, and all my ideas have changed. I've really changed my way of life. Then we must beg Master Dinru to preach again. Yes. They contacted each other. They all wanted to listen to Chu Li preach again and immerse themselves in that wonderful illusion. Unfortunately, when they went to the Temple of Gratitude, they found that Chu Li had already left the temple to promote Buddhism elsewhere. As for where he was going, no one knew. In the end, after these believers worked together to inquire and find connections, they finally obtained some information. They only knew that his ultimate goal was the capital. He was going to the capital to promote Buddhism, and he would preach along the way, but they did not know which city he would stop in. Cloud Tripod City was not far from the capital, but it was still thousands of miles away. It would take half a year to travel faster by water, but it would take a year by land. Moreover, the road was not peaceful, and there would inevitably be places where bandits ran rampant. It was possible to lose one's life. There were only a few people in Yunding City who had been to the capital, and they felt an inexplicable fear. However, when he thought about Chu Li's teachings, he inexplicably gained confidence. If a person who cultivated in Buddhism did not have a firm belief in himself, he would not be able to reach the end. This might also be a test that Master Dinru had given him. Therefore, more than 100 people left Cloud Tripod City and headed to the capital to look for Chu Li. There were tens of thousands of believers, but there were very few who were truly wealthy and had a peaceful mind. It was already rare to see 100 of them. Their group of 100 people took the waterway. Although the cost was 10 times higher, it was comfortable and safe. There were gangs protecting the waterway, and there were no water bandits running amok. Thus, they could sit on the boat and travel leisurely. Along the way, they kept asking for news about Chu Li. Occasionally, when the boat stopped to rest, they would hear news about Chu Li. They would hear news about him giving a lecture in a certain city and causing a sensation. After a few days, they would hear news about him giving a lecture and causing another sensation. The name of the divine monk Dingru spread far and wide. When they arrived at the capital, Chu Li had yet to arrive. After all, Chu Li would rest for a few days in every major city and give lectures. When the group of more than 100 people arrived at the capital, Chu Li had yet to arrive, but his reputation had already spread far and wide. The name of the divine monk Dingru was not only spread in all directions of the capital, but also among the ordinary believers. They were curious to know if he was as magical as he said. His method of giving lectures was better than the most advanced Enlightenment technique. Unfortunately, Chu had not arrived yet. The believers were waiting eagerly, wanting to see the wonders of the divine monk Ding Ru. The group of 100 people stayed in a large inn in the capital, Tong Ru Inn. They gathered together and waited for Chu. Every day, they would go out to ask for news and find out Chu's whereabouts. Everyone was very concerned about Chu. Before he arrived, his name had already spread, so his whereabouts were clear. Chapter 38-49. Greetings, divine monk. Everyone ran to him and bowed with their palms pressed together, their faces full of respect and eagerness. Chu returned the greeting and smiled. Amit Ba. His voice was calm and spread out slowly. More than 2,000 people heard it clearly. Divine monk, you must be tired from the journey. We've prepared a place to rest. Su Xian laughed. Chu shook his head and smiled. I think it's better for me to stay in the temple. There's no need to trouble all of you. Thank you, almsgiver Su. You're welcome. Su Xian quickly waved his hand and said excitedly, Divine monk, you still remember me? Chu smiled. I have a good memory. Almsgivers, you're not from the capital, right? Cloud Tripod City, Sky Rock City, Wind Wave City, and Light City. Thank you for your hard work. Not at all, not at all. Everyone was talking at once as they stared at Chu. Chu said, Since we're fated to meet again, I'll preach a scripture to you. Thank you, divine monk. Everyone was overjoyed. They came all the way here just to listen to the scripture. They could not wait for Chu to start preaching immediately. They did not expect him to do as they wished and start preaching immediately. Su Zonglin, who was at the side, was unwilling. He quickly said, Divine monk Ding Ru must be tired from the journey. How can you preach immediately? Chu smiled and waved his hand. Almsgiver Su, don't worry. Although I've been on the road for a day, I'm not tired. Everyone is tired waiting here too. Let me preach to relieve your fatigue. Sigh. Su Zonglin felt that Chu was too selfless. How could scripture be preached so easily? The more divine a monk was, the less he should preach. Things were precious when they were rare. If one could listen to it easily, they would not treasure it no matter how amazing it was. Chu smiled and shook his head. He got up and went to the gazebo. Everyone made way for him and sat around. Chu was the only one left in the gazebo to show everyone's respect for him. Chu did not stand on ceremony and started preaching immediately. After the scripture imparting technique was performed, everyone was instantly immersed in an illusion and began to listen to Chu's explanation of the Dharma scripture. Chu's explanation was extravagant, and everyone looked as if they had suddenly understood the essence of Buddhism. Everyone who entered the Dharma imparting realm would have this illusion. It was as if they had been enlightened and displayed supreme wisdom, comprehending the Dharma all at once. From then on, they would cast aside their worries and be free. This kind of great peace and joy intoxicated them. Unfortunately, not long after they left the realm of imparting scriptures, this feeling would disappear, and then they would become more and more irresistible, wishing that they could immediately return to their original realm. When everyone came back to their senses, they noticed that the surroundings were already completely enveloped by the night sky. A bright moon hung in the horizon, sprinkling down a chilly silver radiance. The surroundings were extremely quiet, and even though there were 2,000 people, there was no noise. The lantern in the pagoda swayed gently. The night breeze blew gently, but the pagoda was empty. The divine monk Ding Ru was nowhere to be seen. No one knew when he left. Sigh. A long sigh sounded. Everyone felt the same way, and they couldn't help but sigh. The sounds of sighs rose and fell without end, echoing for quite a while. Only a sigh could express their thoughts. Other than sighing, They really had no words to express the complicated feelings in their hearts. What a great monk Ding-ru! Su Xian sighed. Su Zonglin also nodded. He had listened to all of Chu Li's sermons in Cloud Tripod City. Every time he listened, his respect for Chu Li grew. I wonder where the divine monk Ding-ru went, Su Xian said. I wonder if there's an opportunity to listen to the mystical teachings again. Don't worry, the divine monk Ding-ru will spread the teachings in the capital. As long as we are sincere, we'll be able to see him. Su Zonglin smiled. That's good, that's good. Su Xian let out a sigh of relief. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Those who followed in Chu Li's footsteps were all from wealthy families. They had plenty of money and were not afraid of spending money in the capital. They were only worried that after Chu Li became more famous, it would become harder to get close to him, and they would not be able to listen to his sermons. Chu Li stepped into the capital under the cover of the night. The gate of the capital was different from that of Cloud Tripod City. 12 tall, burly, and well-built city guards stood on both sides, staring at the passers-by. Although they did not check for travel permits, they would occasionally search the luggage of the passers-by. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.